At my mother's funeral, my sister Claire stood beside the flower-covered casket and called me the burden Mom carried for years. She said it loudly enough for every cousin, neighbor, and church friend to hear. I wanted to disappear. For 6 years, I had driven Mom to every appointment, held her hand through every hospital stay, and slept beside her bed when she was too afraid to be alone. But I said nothing. Then, as the last mourners filed out, Walter Briggs' mom's executor pressed an old brass key into my palm. "Your mother made me promise this would go only to you," he whispered. "And Meg, don't sign anything Claire puts in front of you." If this moment touched something in you, please like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Have you ever been judged by someone who never knew the sacrifices you made? I did not sleep the night after my mother's funeral. The old brass key sat on the kitchen table beneath the yellow light over the sink, looking small enough to lose in a drawer. I must have stared at it for an hour without touching it. Every time I looked at the key, I heard Walter's voice again. "Don't sign anything Claire puts in front of you." It was strange how quickly grief could be crowded out by fear. The house was quieter than I had ever known it. For 6 years, every room had carried some sign of my mother's life. Her soft slippers scraping the hallway floor, her kettle whistling too loudly because she refused to buy a new one, the low murmur of old game shows coming from the living room while she pretended not to nap in her favorite chair. Now there was only the ticking of the clock above the stove. My mother, Eleanor Whitman, had been gone for 4 days. 4 days since I had held her hand in the hospice room and watched the woman who raised me take her last shallow breath. I had spent the first 2 days making phone calls, meeting with the funeral director, choosing flowers, finding a photograph that looked enough like her to place beside the guest book. I barely had time to cry. Then Claire stood beside our mother's coffin and called me a burden. I wish I could say I was surprised, but the truth was, my sister had been finding ways to say that for years. Not always with those exact words. Claire was too polished for that most of the time. She preferred gentler insults, the kind that sounded almost reasonable if you did not know our history. She's been through a lot. Meg has always needed extra support. Mom worries about her. She just isn't as independent as the rest of us. Claire had a gift for making cruelty sound like concern. She was 4 years younger than me, but for most of our lives, she had carried herself like the older sister. She had the confidence, the tailored clothes, the smooth voice that made people listen. She became a successful real estate agent in Columbus, married a man with a good job in finance, raised a son who went to private school, and lived in a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. And then there was me. I had worked for years as an administrative assistant at the county library. It was not glamorous work, but I loved it. I loved the order of it, the quiet, the way people came in carrying trouble on their faces and left with a book tucked under their arm as if something might still get better. But after my divorce, nothing felt steady anymore. My husband Richard had not been cruel in the dramatic way people imagine. He did not scream or break things. He simply became colder each year until I finally understood that I was living beside someone who no longer saw me. By the time we separated, I had too much credit card debt, too little savings, and no idea how I was going to rebuild my life at 51. I sold my small condo. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment. I told everyone I was fine. I was not fine. Then Mom fell. It happened on a rainy November morning. She had gone out to bring in the newspaper and slipped on the front steps. A neighbor found her sitting in the cold, confused and unable to stand. Her hip was not broken, thank God, but the fall changed something in her. She became frightened of being alone. Her memory started slipping in small, quiet ways. First she forgot appointments, then she forgot whether she had taken her medication. Then, one afternoon, she called me at work because she could not remember how to turn off the oven. Claire came by that weekend. She walked through the house with her arms folded, looking at everything as though she were inspecting a property she had been hired to sell. "She can't live alone anymore," she said. "I know," I answered. "You can't handle this by yourself. I didn't say I could." Claire sighed. "You know what I mean, Meg. I did know. She meant I did not have enough money. She meant I was not organized enough, ambitious enough, capable enough. She meant I was the sister who needed rescuing, never the one who did the rescuing." But Mom looked at me from the couch that day with tears in her eyes. "Would you stay?" she asked. Just 3 words. Would you stay? So I did. I moved into my old bedroom in this house, the same room with the narrow closet and faded blue curtains Mom had sewn herself when I was 13. I told myself it would be temporary, a few months, maybe a year, long enough to help her get stable. But her health did not stabilize. It became a routine of doctor visits, physical therapy, pharmacy lines, insurance calls, pill organizers, grocery lists, and nights spent listening for her footsteps in the hallway. Some mornings she woke up cheerful and clear-eyed, asking about the weather and reminding me that I needed to eat breakfast. Other mornings she looked at me with panic in her face and asked where Dad was. My father had been dead for almost 30 years. I learned not to correct her too quickly. I learned that grief and confusion did not always need facts. Sometimes they just needed a hand held tightly enough. Claire visited perhaps twice a month at first, then once a month, then only when there was something important to discuss. She always arrived with expensive coffee, her phone in one hand, and an expression that told me she had already decided what was best for everyone. "You need to get Mom into assisted living," she would say. "Mom doesn't want that. Mom doesn't know what she wants. She knows she wants to stay in her own home." "And you want to stay here too," Claire would answer. That sentence always landed like a slap. I never paid rent. That part was true. But I paid for groceries whenever I could. I paid for repairs. I covered medication copays when Mom's insurance delayed approval. I used my savings to replace the washing machine when it broke because Mom cried at the thought of strangers taking her laundry somewhere else. I did not keep receipts. Maybe I should have. But when you love someone, you do not always think about proving it later. Mom knew what I did. I think she did anyway. She was not always able to say it. Yet sometimes after I tucked her into bed, she would squeeze my hand and whisper, "You have a good heart, Meg." Those words kept me going. Until the last year. That was when Mom began spending long hours in the basement office. The room had once belonged to my father. After he died, Mom turned it into a cluttered little workspace with metal filing cabinets, old bookcases, and a desk that always smelled faintly of lemon polish. For years I barely went down there. It was too full of papers and old memories. But during her final months, Mom started locking the door. At first, I thought she was simply sorting through documents. She had always been careful with paperwork. She kept every tax return, every warranty card, every birthday card she thought might matter someday. But she became secretive. One night I woke around 2 a.m. and saw a thin line of light under the basement door. I went downstairs and knocked softly. "Mom, are you okay?" There was a long pause before she answered. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Do you need help?" "No." Her voice sounded tired but firm. "I'm putting things in order." I remember standing there with one hand on the railing, feeling uneasy. "Things are already in order," I told her. She laughed quietly from behind the door. "Oh, Meg," she said. "You would be surprised how quickly things can fall apart when the wrong person thinks they have the right to decide everything." At the time, I thought she was talking about bills, or maybe the house. Mom worried about money, even when she had enough. I did not understand she was warning me. The morning after the funeral, I found myself standing in front of that basement door. The brass key was still in my hand, and for the first time, I wondered whether my mother had spent all those late nights preparing me for a truth I had never been brave enough to see. The next morning, Claire arrived before I had even poured my first cup of coffee. I heard her heels on the front porch before the doorbell rang. Claire never wore flats, not even when she came to visit our mother in the hospital. She said heels made her feel put together. To me, they always sounded like a warning. When I opened the door, she stepped inside without waiting to be invited. She wore a fitted charcoal coat. Her blonde hair swept neatly behind one ear, and she carried a leather portfolio under one arm. My stomach tightened. "I thought we should talk before things get complicated," she said. "Things are already complicated." Claire looked past me into the living room. Mom's knitted throw blanket was still folded over the arm of her chair. Her reading glasses rested on the side table beside a crossword puzzle she would never finish. For a moment, Claire's face softened. Then it was gone. "I spoke with a realtor friend this morning," she said. "The market is strong right now. If we list the house before spring, we could get a very good price." I stared at her. "Mom has been gone 4 days." "I know that." "Then why are we talking about selling her house? Because we have to be practical, Meg." There it was. That word again. Practical. It was Claire's favorite weapon because it made every cold decision sound responsible. She walked into the kitchen and set her portfolio on the table right beside the brass key. Her eyes dropped to it. For half a second, something flickered across her face. Not confusion, recognition. I placed my hand over the key. Claire looked up quickly. "What is that nothing?" "Meg, it's a key. I can see that. Then you have your answer." Her mouth tightened. "Did Walter give it to you?" I did not answer. Claire let out a breath through her nose. "Of course he did." The way she said it made my skin prickle. "Why would that matter?" I asked. "It doesn't," she said too quickly. "I just think we need to be careful." Mom was confused toward the end. "You know that." "She was sick," I said. "That doesn't mean she didn't understand what she was doing." Claire pulled out a chair and sat down as though she owned the kitchen. "Meg, I know you loved her. I know you took care of her. But you were also living here. You were dependent on her." My fingers curled around the key. "I was her daughter. You were more than that. You were her full-time responsibility." The words came so smoothly from her mouth that for a moment I almost believed them. Almost. Then I remembered every night I sat beside Mom's bed with a thermometer in one hand and a glass of water in the other. Every time I canceled plans because she was afraid to be alone. Every hour spent on hold with insurance companies while Claire posted pictures from restaurants and open houses. I looked at my sister and said quietly, "You don't get to rewrite what happened in this house." Her eyes sharpened. "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm trying to prevent you from making this harder than it has to be. What does that mean? It means you should start looking for somewhere else to live." The room went still. Claire glanced around the kitchen as if she were already measuring it for a listing. "You have 30 days, she continued. "Maybe a little more if we need time to clean things out. But once we put the house on the market, buyers will want to see it." I could barely breathe. "You're telling me to leave. I'm telling you we both deserve to move forward. By throwing me out of Mom's house before we've even read the will." Claire leaned back in her chair, looking annoyed now. "Walter will handle the legal details." "But come on, Meg. We both know Mom didn't have much. This house is the only real asset. We sell it, split the money, and everyone can move on. Everyone. Except I was the one being asked to pack my life into boxes while Mom's coat still hung by the door." I looked down at the brass key again. Claire noticed. Her face changed, just slightly, but enough. "You know something," I said. She blinked. "What?" "You know what this key is for." "That's ridiculous. Then why did you look at it like that?" Claire stood so fast that the chair scraped against the floor. "You're exhausted. You're grieving. You're looking for enemies where there aren't any. You called me a burden at Mom's funeral. I was emotional. You were cruel." For the first time, her polished expression cracked. "You think you're the only one who lost her," she snapped. "You think I didn't watch Mom get older? You think I didn't feel guilty every time I walked out that door?" I stared at her. There it was. Not an apology, not regret, guilt disguised as anger. Claire grabbed her portfolio. "We'll meet with Walter soon," she said. "And when we do, I suggest you remember that this is not just your life. It's mine too." Then she walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to shake the framed family photos in the hallway. I stood alone in the kitchen for a long time. By noon, I had called Walter Briggs. He answered on the second ring. "Meg," he said gently, "I was hoping you would call." Claire came by. I assumed she might. "She wants to sell the house. She told me to move out in 30 days. There was a pause. "Do not agree to anything Walter said, and do not sign any documents. She knows about the key." Another pause. Longer this time. Did she say that? No. But she looked at it like she had seen it before. Walter exhaled slowly. "Then we need to meet today." He asked me to come to his office at 3 o'clock. I spent the next few hours trying to keep myself busy. I washed dishes that were already clean. I folded towels. I stood in Mom's bedroom and stared at the old floral wallpaper she had always hated but never changed. At 2:30, I picked up the brass key and slipped it into my purse. Walter's office was in a brick building downtown above a pharmacy and across from the county courthouse. I had been there many times with Mom over the years. She had always liked Walter, said he was the kind of man who listens before he speaks. When I arrived, his assistant led me into the same quiet conference room Mom and I had used before. Walter was waiting with a thick folder on the table. He looked older than I remembered. His silver hair was neatly combed, but his eyes were tired. "Sit down," he said. I sat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he slid a small folded note toward me. "It was in your mother's personal file," he said. "She instructed me to give it to you only after the funeral." My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably Mom's, small, careful letters in blue ink. "Meg, do not let Claire rush you. Go with Walter to the bank. Open the box only when he is there. And please remember, this being quiet is not the same as being weak. Love always, Mom." My eyes filled before I finished reading. Walter waited until I looked up. "The key opens a safety deposit box at First Community Bank," he said. "Your mother opened it several years ago. She updated the access instructions last summer. Why didn't she tell me?" "She believed telling you too soon would put you in the middle of something you were not ready to face." "What is in the box?" Walter folded his hands. "I don't know everything. Your mother was very specific about what I could and could not see. That sounds like she was afraid. I think she was cautious," he said. Of Claire, Walter did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Your mother had concerns." My heart dropped. "What kind of concerns?" "You will understand more after we open the box." I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to shake the truth out of him right there. But I could see in his face that he was holding a promise he had made to my mother, and Mom had trusted him, so I nodded. Walter looked at his watch. "The bank closes at 5. We should go now." As we walked out of his office, I glanced down at the key in my hand. It no longer felt old or ordinary. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every late night Mom spent behind that locked basement door. And as Walter led me toward the elevator, I realized something I had not wanted to admit before. Claire was not just trying to sell Mom's house. She was trying to get to something before I did. First Community Bank sat at the corner of Main and Jefferson across from the old diner where Mom used to take me for grilled cheese sandwiches after school. The building had been renovated since then, but the heavy stone columns and brass handles on the doors were exactly the same. I stood outside with Walter for a moment, staring at my reflection in the glass. I looked older than I felt. My black funeral dress hung loosely on me. I had not slept much since Mom died, and there were pale shadows beneath my eyes. In one hand I held my purse. In the other, I held the brass key so tightly that its ridged edges pressed into my palm. Walter placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to do this today," he said. "Yes," I told him, "I do." The inside of the bank smelled faintly of polished wood and paper. A young teller greeted Walter by name, then led us through a secured door into a quiet hallway. At the end of it was a small room with a steel door and a long table in the center. The manager, a woman named Mrs. Hanley, checked our identification twice. Then she looked at me with a careful expression. "Your mother was here often," she said. "She was very proud of you." The words caught me off guard. I swallowed hard. "Was she?" Mrs. Hanley smiled softly. "She talked about you every time she came in." Before I could ask what Mom had said, Mrs. Hanley opened a large metal cabinet filled with rows of numbered boxes. Walter handed her the paperwork. She found the box, removed it carefully, and carried it to the table. It was larger than I expected. Not huge, but not small enough to contain only papers. My breath caught. The brass key fit perfectly into the lock. For a second, I could not turn it. My fingers felt numb. Walter stood beside me, silent and patient. Finally, I twisted the key. There was a soft click. The lid opened. At first, I saw only envelopes. Several were tied with faded blue ribbon. There were small stacks of papers, a thick manila folder, an old black and white photograph, and a yellowed map folded into quarters. I reached for the photograph first. It showed my mother standing outside a large old house. The house had a steep roof, wide front porch, and rows of tall windows with peeling white trim. A rusted iron fence ran along the sidewalk. Mom looked younger than I had ever remembered her. Her hair was dark, then pulled into a loose bun. She wore a long wool coat and stood with one hand resting on the porch railing. Beside her was a man I did not recognize. He was broad-shouldered, with gray hair and a carpenter's belt around his waist. He was smiling at Mom, not at the camera. It was the kind of smile people gave when they knew a private joke. I turned the photograph over. In Mom's handwriting it said, Rosewood House, 1994. The beginning. I looked at Walter. What is Rosewood House? He did not answer right away. Instead, he nodded toward the manila folder. Open that. Inside were official documents, property tax records, insurance papers, maintenance invoices, a deed. My eyes moved slowly across the page. The property was located in a town called Millbrook, about an hour outside Columbus. Owner Eleanor Whitman. I read it twice, then a third time. This can't be right, I whispered. It is, Walter said. My mother owned another house. Yes. For how long? More than 30 years. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I sat down. Mom had complained about saving money. She clipped coupons. She repaired old clothes rather than replacing them. She refused to turn up the heat in winter unless someone was sick. And all that time she had owned a second property. Why didn't she tell us, I asked. Walter sat across from me. That is explained in the letter. I looked back into the box. Beneath the folder was a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. Meg Whitman. The handwriting looked shaky compared to the neat notes Mom had always left on the refrigerator. I did not open it yet. I was afraid. Not of what it might say, of what it might change. My whole life I had believed my mother was simple, not weak exactly, but predictable. A woman who worked at the school library, paid her bills, watered her roses, and spent Sundays making roast chicken. I thought I knew her. Now I was holding proof that I knew almost nothing. Walter must have seen the confusion in my face. Your mother was a careful woman, he said. She did not hide things because she was ashamed. She hid things because she understood people. I looked at him sharply. People like Claire Walter's mouth tightened. Your mother feared that if Claire knew about the property, she would treat it as a business opportunity instead of what it was meant to be. What was it meant to be? He pointed to another stack of papers. I pulled them toward me. They were old lease agreements. Some were handwritten. Some were typed on faded paper. The tenants had names I did not recognize. Single women, retired teachers, widows, a man who had recently left the hospital, a woman with 2 children. The rent amounts were low, almost unbelievably low. My throat tightened. She rented rooms there, I said. Walter nodded. Rosewood House was a boarding house. Your mother purchased it after your father died. I looked at the picture again. The woman in it was only a few years older than I was now. She never told me. She did not want either of you to feel responsible for it. But Claire knows. Walter looked down. Not everything. That answer made the air feel colder. I leaned forward. What does that mean? It means Claire knew there was a property. But she did not know where all the documents were. She did not know how your mother arranged ownership. My heartbeat quickened. So she has known about this all along. Not all along? Walter said carefully, but for some time. I thought about the way Claire had looked at the key in the kitchen, the flash of recognition, the sudden urgency in her voice. I felt something rise inside me that was not grief. It was anger, pure and sharp. Did Mom tell her I asked? No, Walter said. Your mother believed Claire discovered it through papers she found while helping organize some of your mother's financial records. Helping organize? I repeated bitterly. Walter's eyes softened. Your mother began to question Claire's intentions after that. I looked down at the folder again. At the deed. At the old photo. At the evidence of a life my mother had quietly built without anyone's approval. Then I unfolded the yellowed map. A small red circle marked the location of Rosewood House. Next to it in Mom's handwriting were 3 words. Do not sell. My hands started shaking. Walter saw it. There is more, he said. I looked at the sealed envelope with my name on it. My mother's final letter. For a long moment I could not move. Then I broke the seal. The paper inside was folded twice. I opened it carefully. Meg, there are things I should have told you sooner. I kept quiet because I thought silence would keep the peace. But silence only gives the loudest person room to decide the truth. Rosewood House belongs to a trust. You are the only person I have named to receive it. But before Walter transfers anything to you, I need you to understand why I made that choice. Claire will tell you that you are not capable. She will say you are emotional dependent and easily confused. Do not believe her. You have spent your whole life mistaking kindness for weakness because people like Claire benefit when you do. I stopped reading. My vision blurred. Mom had known. She had known exactly what Claire said about me. Maybe she had heard it directly. Maybe she had seen it in the way Claire spoke over me at family dinners, in the way she rolled her eyes when I expressed an opinion, in the way she constantly acted as if she were saving me from my own life. I forced myself to continue. There is a reason I cannot leave Rosewood House to Claire. You must learn it for yourself. The truth is in the papers and in the people who still remember. Trust Walter. Trust your own eyes. And Meg, please do not let guilt keep you from protecting what is yours. Love always, Mom. When I finished, I pressed the letter against my chest. I could not stop crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the quiet kind of crying that comes when someone you love reaches across death and finally says the words you needed to hear all your life. Walter did not interrupt. He gave me time. After a while, he slid a tissue box closer to me. There is one more document, he said. I wiped my face and looked up. He pointed to a smaller envelope tucked beneath the property records. It was labeled, "To be opened after Meg reads Eleanor's letter." I stared at it. What is this? Walter's expression changed. This time there was no softness in it, only concern. That he said quietly is where your mother explains why she stopped trusting Claire. I stared at the smaller envelope for so long that Walter finally reached across the table and turned it toward me. The paper looked ordinary, cream-colored, slightly bent at the corners. But my mother's handwriting across the front made it feel heavier than anything I had ever held. To be opened after Meg reads Eleanor's letter. My name was not on it this time. That frightened me more. I slipped one finger beneath the seal and opened it carefully. Inside was a single letter folded into thirds. The first line was dated almost 8 months before Mom died. Meg, if you are reading this, then Walter has finally shown you Rosewood House. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I lowered the letter for a moment. The bank room seemed too quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the tick of a clock somewhere behind the wall, the soft scrape of Walter shifting in his chair. Then I continued. Your father and I bought Rosewood House after he passed away. I was terrified. I had never signed a mortgage alone. I had never made such a decision without him. But I had watched too many women my age lose their homes after a husband died, a marriage ended, or an illness took everything they had saved. I wanted to create something that could help people stay on their feet. My throat tightened. That was Mom. She had never been loud about her generosity. She did not attend charity galas or have plaques with her name on them. She made casseroles for grieving families. She slipped grocery gift cards into church envelopes. She kept a box of winter coats in the hall closet just in case someone needed one. I read on. At first, Rosewood House had 4 tenants, a retired teacher named Marjorie, a young woman named Ruth who had left an unhappy marriage, a widower named Thomas who needed a place until his son could arrange better care, and a nurse named Eliza who worked nights and could not afford an apartment near the hospital. The rent was low. Sometimes I accepted less than the full amount. Sometimes I accepted nothing for a month or two, but the house paid for itself, slowly, quietly, year after year. And it gave people time. I stopped again. Time. That word stayed with me. I had spent the last 6 years giving Mom time. Time to stay in her own house. Time to feel safe. Time to be herself for a little longer. Maybe that was why she trusted me. Maybe she knew I understood the value of time when someone was scared. I kept reading. Claire knew nothing about Rosewood House until last spring. She came over one afternoon while you were taking me to physical therapy. I had left a tax statement on my desk. She found it. At first she asked innocent questions. She wanted to know whether the property was worth much. She asked whether I had considered selling it. She told me she could handle the listing and make sure I received the best price. But I knew my daughter. She did not ask because she was worried about me. She asked because she saw money. My stomach turned. I thought of Claire standing in Mom's kitchen only days after the funeral telling me we had to be practical. I thought of the way she had looked at the brass key. I had felt angry then. Now I felt something worse. Betrayal. Mom continued. At first, I tried to be patient. I told Claire that Rosewood House was not for sale. I told her the people who lived there depended on it. She smiled and said she understood, but after that she began bringing it up every time she visited. She said I was being sentimental. She said the house was old and expensive to maintain. She said I was leaving money on the table. Then she began telling me that Meg would not know what to do with it. That sentence made my hands shake. I looked at Walter. He was watching me with quiet sadness. She said that I asked. Walter nodded slowly. Your mother told me Claire questioned your ability to manage the property. I looked back at the letter. Claire said you were too soft-hearted to deal with tenants' repairs taxes and legal paperwork. She said you would let people take advantage of you. She said you would become overwhelmed. I asked her why she believed she had the right to decide what you could handle. She did not answer. Instead, she said you had been a burden to me for too long and that it was time for someone competent to take over. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. Burden. The same word Claire had used at the funeral. It had not slipped out because she was emotional. It was something she had been saying behind my back for months, maybe years. I pressed my lips together, trying not to cry again. Mom's letter went on. That was the moment I understood that Claire was not worried about my future. She was worried about what she could gain from it. I began making plans then. I met with Walter. I placed Rosewood House in a trust. I named you as the beneficiary because I have watched you care for people without asking what they can give you in return. You will be afraid at first. You will tell yourself you are not ready. But you are more ready than you know. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. Walter quietly pushed the tissue box toward me again. I took one and kept reading. There is one more thing you must understand. Claire is not acting alone. My breath stopped. I read the line again. Claire is not acting alone. I looked up sharply. What does that mean? Walter folded his hands. Finish the letter, he said. His voice was calm, but something in his eyes told me he already knew exactly what was coming. I turned back to the page. Noah has been in trouble for some time. I did not learn the full extent of it until Claire came to me last fall. She was upset, but she would not explain everything. She only said Noah had made some poor financial decisions and needed help quickly. I offered what I could without putting myself at risk, but Claire wanted more. She wanted Rosewood House. She said it was only a building. She said the tenants could be moved somewhere else. She said I owed her because I'd helped you so much over the years. That sentence made me gasp. My own sister had used Mom's care for me as leverage, as though my mother had ever treated helping me like a debt, as though love had a balance sheet. I forced myself to keep reading. I told Claire I would not sell the house. She became angry. Not loud at first. Cold. She said I did not understand what it was like to watch your child struggle. She said I would rather help strangers than my own grandson. I told her that helping Noah did not mean sacrificing everyone else who depended on Rosewood House. That is when she said something I cannot forget. She said, once you're gone, Meg won't know what she's looking at. I'll take care of it. My fingers went numb. The letter blurred in front of me. I could not move. I could not breathe. Walter leaned forward. Meg, she said that I whispered. She actually said that. Yes, he replied softly. I shook my head. She was planning this while Mom was alive. Walter did not deny it. She may have believed she could pressure you after your mother's death, he said. Your mother feared that very thing. I read the final paragraph. Meg, please do not hate your sister so deeply that you become like her. But do not excuse what she does. Love without boundaries becomes permission. Protect the house. Protect yourself. And remember that you are not responsible for saving people who are willing to hurt you to save themselves. Mom. The letter ended there. No signature. No extra words. Just Mom. I held the page against my chest and sat very still. For years I had tried to understand Claire. I told myself she was stressed, busy, frightened, maybe even jealous in ways she would never admit. I had spent so much time making excuses for her that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to expect better. Walter opened the manila folder again and took out a legal document. "This is the trust agreement," he said. "Rosewood House is legally protected. Claire cannot simply sell it. She cannot force you to sell it. But there are conditions." I looked at him. "What conditions?" "Your mother wanted you to understand the full situation before taking control. She did not want you to inherit blindly. What am I supposed to do?" Walter slid a sheet of paper toward me. At the top was the name of a man I had never seen before, George Keller. Beneath it was an address in Millbrook and a phone number. "George was your mother's contractor," Walter explained. "He helped renovate Rosewood House over the years. Your mother trusted him. She believed he could tell you things you need to know. About Claire. About what Claire has already done." The words made my heart pound. Already done. I stared at the paper. Then I looked at the old photograph again. My mother standing in front of Rosewood House. Young, determined, secretly building a life that could protect people long after she was gone. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt purpose. Claire had spent years making me believe I was the fragile one, but my mother had trusted me with a house, a promise, and a truth she had been too afraid to speak aloud while she was alive. I folded Mom's letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Then I picked up the paper with George Keller's name. "Walter," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to surprise me. "I want to see the house." Walter did not try to stop me. He only looked at the clock on the wall, then back at me. "Millbrook is about an hour from here," he said. "You could go tomorrow morning." "No," I replied. "I want to go today." The word surprised me. For most of my life, I had been the person who waited. I waited for other people to make decisions. I waited for Claire to calm down. I waited for Richard to remember why he loved me. I waited for Mom's health to improve, even when I knew it would not. But sitting in that bank room with Mom's letters spread across the table, I felt something change. I was tired of waiting. Walter nodded once. "All right." We returned to his office long enough for him to make copies of the trust documents and print directions to Rosewood House. While his assistant prepared the papers, I stood near the window and watched people crossing the street below. They carried grocery bags, briefcases, coffee cups, ordinary lives moving forward. Mine had stopped 4 days ago, yet somehow beneath the grief another life was beginning to open. Walter came back with a thick envelope. "You should know something before you meet George Keller," he said. I turned toward him. "Your mother began documenting certain concerns last year. Not because she wanted conflict, but because she was frightened that someone might challenge her decisions after she was gone. Claire." Walter's expression tightened. "Yes." I looked down at the envelope. "What kind of documentation?" "Notes, financial records, a few copies of emails. She also gave me instructions about a recorded conversation." The room seemed to close in around me. A recorded conversation. Walter nodded. "Your mother asked that it not be played until the time was right. What does that mean?" "It means she believed you needed to see Rosewood House first." I tried to steady my breathing. Every answer seemed to uncover another question. What did Claire do? Walter was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your mother believed Claire was trying to gain control of the property before you knew it existed." I felt a dull ache spread through my chest. "So Claire knew about Rosewood House. She knew enough to be interested," Walter said. "But she did not know how your mother had protected it." I thought of Claire's face when she saw the brass key, the recognition, the fear. I had not imagined it. She thought she could get there before me. That is likely. For a second, anger made me want to call Claire immediately. I wanted to demand the truth. I wanted to ask her how long she had been planning to erase me from Mom's life. But Mom's words came back to me. "Do not let Claire rush you." So I slid the papers into my purse and kept my phone in my pocket. The drive to Millbrook was quiet. Walter offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to go alone. He did not argue. He only asked me to call when I arrived. The highway stretched through gray Ohio fields, bare trees and small towns with faded gas stations and diners that looked unchanged since the 1980s. Rain tapped lightly against the windshield. I kept thinking about Mom. Not the mother from my childhood standing in the kitchen with flour on her cheek. Not the mother who fell asleep in her recliner with a mystery novel on her lap. I thought about the woman in the old photograph, the woman who had bought a boarding house after my father died. The woman who had signed legal documents in secret, managed tenants, made repairs, paid taxes, and kept an entire second life hidden from us. Maybe she had not been quiet because she lacked courage. Maybe she had been quiet because she had learned that not everyone deserved access to her strength. When I reached Millbrook, the rain had stopped. It was the kind of small town where the streets curved around old brick storefronts, where a bakery sign hung above a striped awning, where people still greeted each other from porches. Rosewood House stood at the end of Maple Street. I recognized it immediately from the photograph. The porch had been repainted, but the tall windows were the same. The iron fence had been repaired. Flower beds lined the walkway, though most of the plants had gone dormant for winter. It was bigger than I had imagined. 3 stories, pale gray siding, white trim, a deep front porch, and a wide staircase leading to the front door. For a moment I stayed in the car. My hands rested on the steering wheel. This place belonged to my mother. Now somehow it belonged to me. A man stepped out from the side of the house carrying a toolbox. He was in his late 60s, maybe early 70s, with thick white hair beneath a faded baseball cap. He moved slowly but steadily, as though every step had been taken on construction sites for decades. He noticed my car, then he noticed me. His face changed. He walked toward the curb. I stepped out. "Are you George Keller?" I asked. He stared at me for a moment. Then he smiled, but it was not a cheerful smile. It was the kind people wear when the past suddenly stands in front of them. "You must be Meg," he said. My throat tightened. "How did you know you have your mother's eyes?" I looked down, unable to speak. George set the toolbox on the ground. "I was sorry to hear about Eleanor," he said softly. "She was a good woman." "She was," I said. He nodded toward the house. "She loved this place." I looked at it again. Why didn't she tell me? George took a long breath. "That wasn't mine to explain." "But she told you things. Some things." I pulled the paper from my purse, the one Walter had given me. George Keller's name, his number, the proof that Mom wanted me to find him. She said you could help me understand. George looked at the paper and nodded slowly. "Come inside." The front door opened into a wide hallway with dark wood floors and a staircase curling toward the second level. The house smelled faintly of furniture polish, old books, and something warm cooking in the kitchen. A woman in her 70s passed through the hall carrying a mug of tea. She smiled at George. "New tenant?" she asked. "No," he said. "Family." Her eyes moved to me, then softened. "Oh," she whispered. "Eleanor's daughter." I nodded. The woman reached out and squeezed my hand. "Your mother helped me when I had nowhere else to go," she said. "I hope you know that." I could not answer. My throat had closed. George led me into a small office off the main hall. It had a desk, file cabinets, and framed pictures on the walls. One was of Rosewood House in summer. Another showed Mom standing beside George, and several tenants at what looked like a picnic. Mom was laughing. I had not seen that expression in years. "She used to come here every month," George said, "even after her health got worse. She drove all the way from Columbus sometimes. Other times, I picked her up." I sat down slowly. "She never told me. She wanted you to have your own life." I almost laughed at that. My own life. George looked at me carefully. "She loved you, Meg. She worried you had spent too many years believing you needed permission to live." The words hurt because they were true. George opened a drawer in the desk and took out a thick folder. "This is why Walter sent you." He placed it in front of me. Inside were contractor estimates, inspection reports, photographs of the basement, and printed emails. At first, I did not understand what I was looking at. Then I saw Claire's name, Claire Dawson. My heart started pounding. One email was addressed to George. It said, "Hi, George. I'm helping my mother evaluate some options for Rosewood House. We may be preparing it for a sale, so I need a realistic estimate for repairs that would increase market value. Please send pricing and timelines as soon as possible. Claire." Pretending Mom had approved it, I looked at George. "She asked you to prepare it for sale." "Not exactly," he said. "She came here 3 times, asked questions, took pictures, wanted to know which tenants had leases and which ones could be moved quickly." My stomach turned. She wanted to throw them out. She wanted to clear the house. For Noah. George did not answer immediately. Then he nodded. She mentioned her son was in a difficult spot financially. I stared at the emails again. The dates were only 6 months old. Mom had still been alive, still fragile, still depending on me to manage her medication and appointments, while Claire was secretly walking through this house, measuring how much money she could pull from it. "Did Mom know?" I asked. George's face hardened. Eventually, how Claire made a mistake. He turned to a second folder and removed a photograph. It showed Claire standing on Rosewood House's front porch beside a younger man in a dark jacket. Noah. In the picture, Noah was pointing toward the upper windows. Claire was holding what looked like a clipboard. The photo had been taken from across the street. "Who took this?" I asked. "One of the tenants," George said. She was worried. Claire told her that everyone would need to start looking for new places soon. My blood ran cold. She said that, yes. I could barely look at the picture. All I could think about was Mom's letter. Claire is not acting alone. For years I had told myself Claire was selfish because she was stressed, not because she was cruel. But this was not stress. This was planning. This was betrayal with a schedule. George leaned back in his chair. "There's more," he said quietly. I looked up. He pulled one final envelope from the folder. It was addressed to Walter Briggs. And written across the front in my mother's handwriting were 4 words that made my hands go cold. "If Claire denies everything." For a few seconds, I could not bring myself to touch the envelope. It lay between George and me on the desk, thin and ordinary, yet somehow more frightening than the emails, the photograph, or even Mom's letters from the bank. "If Claire denies everything." My mother had written those words before she died. That meant she had expected my sister to lie. George watched me carefully but did not rush me. Finally, I reached for the envelope. The paper made a soft, crackling sound as I opened it. Inside was a short note in Mom's handwriting and a small flash drive taped to the back. The note read, "Walter. If Claire claims she never tried to sell Rosewood House, George has the records. If she claims she only asked questions, show Meg the emails. If she says she acted for my benefit, let her hear her own words." I stopped. My hands were shaking. Let her hear her own words. I looked up at George. "Is this the recording Walter mentioned?" George nodded slowly. "I believe so. Have you heard it? No. Eleanor never let me. She only asked me to keep it safe until Walter needed it." I stared at the flash drive. I could feel the room closing in around me, the old wood walls, the soft ticking of a clock, the faint sounds of life in the hallway outside, the creak of a floorboard, a distant cough, someone laughing softly near the kitchen. All of it felt painfully normal, yet my own family was falling apart in my hands. I put the flash drive back on the desk. "I can't listen to it here," I whispered. George nodded. "You don't have to." I looked around the office again, the framed photos, the folders, the old wooden desk where Mom must have sat making decisions I had never known she was making. She came here every month I asked. "Almost every month," George said. "Sometimes twice." She checked on the tenants, made notes about repairs, brought food if someone was sick. She did all that while I thought she was going to physical therapy or visiting friends. She didn't want to worry you. I felt a strange ache in my chest. Mom had spent years protecting me from the weight she carried, and I had spent years believing she was fragile because she needed help walking, because her memory sometimes failed, because she had become quieter with age. But before me stood proof that she had been building a safety net for people long before I ever needed one myself. "Why did she trust you?" I asked. George smiled faintly. "I fixed the porch steps wrong the first time." I blinked. "What?" He chuckled under his breath. "That was 30 years ago. I was younger, too proud, too sure I knew better." Eleanor came out with a tape measure and showed me exactly where I'd miscalculated. For the first time that day, I smiled. "She did that." "She did." His expression softened. She wasn't loud about her strength, but she had it, and she knew when someone was trying to take advantage of her. The smile faded from my face. "Then why did Claire get this far?" George leaned his elbows on the desk. "Because your mother was sick, because Claire was family, and because Eleanor didn't want to believe her own daughter could look her in the eye and plan around her death. That hurt more than I expected." I looked down at the printed emails again. One message had been sent only 3 weeks before Mom's final hospitalization. Claire had asked George to estimate the cost of repainting the exterior, replacing the porch railing, and removing unnecessary tenant furnishings. She had also asked how quickly he could begin work if the ownership situation was finalized. Ownership situation. The words were so cold. She had not even waited for Mom to die before planning what to do with the people living there. I turned another page. There was a document with handwritten notes in the margin. Potential listing price. Vacate lower floor units first. Best timing early spring. No need to disclose long-term tenant arrangements to buyers until later. My stomach dropped. Did Claire write this, I asked? George nodded. She left it behind after one of her visits. I stared at it, unable to speak. I had always known Claire was ambitious. Even as a child, she needed to win everything. The best grades, the newest clothes, the most expensive car. She used to say she was just practical, as though wanting more than everyone else was a moral virtue. But this was not ambition. This was greed dressed in business language. Did Noah come with her often, I asked. Twice that I saw, George said. He was quieter than Claire, but he listened, took notes, asked questions about permit zoning and what the house might be worth if it became apartments. A chill moved through me. Apartments, George nodded. That was the idea, I think. Sell it to a developer or renovate it and raise the rents until none of the current tenants could stay. I pictured the elderly woman in the hallway, the way she had squeezed my hand and said Mom helped her when she had nowhere else to go. And suddenly the story was no longer only about my inheritance. It was about her and everyone else in this house. Mom had not kept Rosewood House secret because it made her wealthy. She had kept it secret because she knew someone like Claire would see only profit. I rose from the chair and walked toward the window. Outside, the front yard was damp from the rain. A sparrow hopped along the fence. Across the street, a boy in a red jacket rode his bicycle through a puddle while his mother called after him. I pressed my hand against the glass. Did Claire ever tell the tenants Mom was gone, I asked. No, George said, not directly. What does that mean? She told one of them your mother had been declining quickly and that changes were coming. She said she was trying to make things easier for everyone. I closed my eyes. Claire had always been good at sounding helpful, even when she was hurting someone. What did the tenants do? Mostly they got scared. My throat tightened. Did anyone leave? One woman moved out last month. She thought the house was being sold. I turned around sharply. Last month? George nodded. Your mother was still alive. The room went silent. Mom had been in and out of the hospital then. She had been weak, confused, struggling to keep food down. I had been sleeping in a chair beside her bed, trying to convince her to drink water. And somewhere else, Claire had been creating fear inside Rosewood House. I felt something hot rise in my chest. For the first time, I understood why Mom had written what she did. Silence only gives the loudest person room to decide the truth. I had been silent with Claire for years, silent when she mocked my job, silent when she implied I had failed because my marriage ended, silent when she called me dependent, silent because I thought keeping the peace made me the better person. But all that silence had done was give her more room. George stood and came toward me. You don't have to make any decisions today, he said. Yes, I do. He studied my face. I'm going to protect this house, I said. The words came out quietly, but they were steady. George nodded once. I think your mother knew you would. My phone began to ring. Claire. Her name flashed across the screen. For a moment I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. What I said. There was a pause. Claire was not used to hearing that tone from me. Meg, she said carefully. Where are you? Why? Because I came by Mom's house and you weren't there. I'm out. That isn't an answer. No, it isn't. Her breath caught faintly. Then her voice sharpened. Did you meet with Walter? Yes. Did he show you something? I glanced at the papers spread across George's desk. He showed me enough. Claire went quiet. For several seconds I heard nothing but distant traffic through her phone. Then she said, Listen to me. Mom was not herself near the end. She was herself enough to know you were planning to sell Rosewood House. The silence on the line changed. It became heavier, colder. I don't know what you think you know, Claire said, but you need to be very careful. I am being careful. No, Meg, you're being emotional. I almost laughed. For years, that word had been one of Claire's favorite ways to dismiss me. Emotional, as if grief made me stupid, as if anger made me unreliable. as if a woman could not be hurt and right at the same time. "You told people they would have to leave this house," I said. "Who told you that?" "That doesn't matter. It matters if someone is feeding you lies. Were you going to sell it?" Claire exhaled hard. It was a possibility Mom couldn't manage it anymore. "So you decided you could—" "I was trying to help Noah." There it was. Not denial, not really, just a confession wrapped in desperation. "You were going to take away homes from people Mom promised to protect," I said. "You don't understand what it's like to watch your child drown. I understand what it's like to watch our mother die while you planned what to take from her." Claire made a sharp sound, almost like she had been slapped. "Don't you dare judge me," she said. "You've had Mom taking care of you for years." The old Meg would have gone quiet. The old Meg would have apologized just to end the conversation. But I looked around Rosewood House, at the worn floors Mom had saved, at the tenants who had trusted her, at the truth she had hidden until the moment I was ready. And I said, "No, Claire. Mom didn't take care of me because I was a burden. She took care of me because she loved me, the same way I took care of her." Claire said nothing. Then very softly she whispered, "This isn't over." "No," I replied. "It isn't." I ended the call. My hand was still shaking, but not from fear. George picked up the flash drive from the desk and placed it in my palm. "You should give this to Walter," he said. "And Meg?" I looked at him. "Your mother wasn't asking you to fight for a house." He glanced toward the hallway where the quiet life of Rosewood House continued. "She was asking you to fight for the people inside it." I closed my fingers around the flash drive, and for the first time since Mom's funeral, I knew exactly what I had to do next. I drove back to Columbus with the flash drive in my purse and a feeling in my chest that I could no longer name as grief alone. It was grief, yes, but it was also anger. Not the loud kind, not the kind that made you throw dishes or scream into a pillow. It was the kind that sat quietly beside you in the car, watching the road unfold, reminding you of every moment you had accepted too little because you were afraid of making someone else uncomfortable. By the time I pulled into Mom's driveway, the sun had already started to sink. The house looked exactly the way it had that morning. The same porch light. The same flower pots Mom had refused to throw away even after the geraniums died. The same narrow front steps where she had fallen years ago and changed all our lives. But I was not the same woman who had left that house. I walked inside and locked the door behind me. For a moment, I stood in the dark hallway listening. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Yet I could feel Mom everywhere. In the framed family photo near the stairs, in the smell of lavender powder still lingering in the coat closet, in the stack of unopened mail on the little table by the door. I went into the kitchen and placed the flash drive beside the brass key. 2 small objects. 2 things my mother had left behind, both of them capable of changing everything. My phone rang before I could sit down. It was Walter. "I was about to call you," I said. "I spoke with George," he replied. "Already. He called me after you left. He said you found the files. I found more than files." Walter was silent. "I have the flash drive," I said. "The one Mom left for you." His voice lowered. "Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Good. Do not plug it into your computer." I froze. "Why not?" "Because I do not know whether it contains only audio. It may include other documents, and I do not want anything accidentally altered. Bring it to my office tomorrow morning. I'll have someone preserve the contents properly." I looked at the flash drive on the table. "Walter," I said, "how bad is this?" There was a pause. Then he answered honestly, "I don't know yet." That was worse than any answer. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of water and sat alone in Mom's kitchen. I kept hearing Claire's voice from the phone call. I was trying to help Noah, as though that made everything reasonable, as though being desperate erased the people she was willing to hurt. I thought about Noah when he was small. He used to spend summers at Mom's house. He had freckles across his nose and a laugh that made him hiccup. Mom taught him how to plant tomatoes in the backyard. He called her Nana and begged her to make apple pie every Thanksgiving. I had loved him. I still did in a way. But love was complicated when it was forced to stand beside betrayal. At 8 o'clock, there was a knock at the front door. I knew who it was before I looked. Claire stood on the porch. She had changed clothes. No more funeral black. She wore jeans, a cream sweater, and a long camel-colored coat. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, making her look softer than she had that morning. For anyone else, it might have worked. For me, it only made her seem more dangerous. I opened the door, but kept the chain latched. "What do you want?" Claire looked wounded. "Can we talk?" "We've talked." "No, Meg. We argued. That's different." I almost laughed. "Is it?" She glanced at the chain on the door. "You're really locking me out now I'm setting a boundary." Her mouth tightened. "Since when do you use words like that?" "Since I realized I should have started a long time ago." For a moment I saw a flash of the sister I remembered, the little girl who used to sleep in my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who cried in my room after her first heartbreak, the young mother who let me hold Noah when he was only 3 days old. Then that softness vanished beneath something colder. "You went to Rosewood House. It was not a question." "Yes." Claire looked away. Her jaw moved slightly as if she were swallowing anger. "George called Walter." "I know. He had no right. No right to tell me about the house Mom owned. No right to interfere in family business." "Family business," I repeated. "Claire, you told tenants they might have to leave. I said there could be changes. You took Noah there and discussed turning it into apartments." She exhaled sharply. "You don't understand the whole situation." "Then explain it." She looked directly at me. "Noah is in trouble." "I know. He made mistakes. Big ones. He trusted the wrong people. He invested money he didn't have in things he didn't understand." Her voice trembled for the first time. "He owes more than he can pay." I listened, not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I wanted to know how far she was willing to go, how much I asked. Claire's eyes flickered. "It doesn't matter. It does if you were willing to sell Mom's house to cover it." She pressed her lips together. "Hundreds of thousands." The number hit me hard. "Claire?" He thought he could flip properties. Then he got involved with some private lenders. The interest kept growing. He was embarrassed, so he hid it from everyone. I thought of Noah sitting in Mom's kitchen last Christmas, smiling politely, while Claire praised him for his new job. I remembered how tense he looked, how often he checked his phone. "He could lose his house," Claire continued. "He could lose everything." "And you thought that meant Rosewood House should be sold." I thought it could save him. "No, you thought it could save you from watching him fail." That landed. Claire's eyes filled with tears. For a second, I almost opened the door. Then she said, "Mom helped you when you were in trouble." My hand went still on the chain. "She let you move in. She paid bills for you. She gave you a place when your marriage fell apart. Why is it wrong for me to ask her to help Noah?" "It wasn't wrong to ask," I said quietly. "It was wrong to take." Her face hardened. "You think you're better than me now? I think Mom had the right to decide what happened to her property, and she made the wrong choice." There it was. Not regret, not guilt, only resentment. Claire leaned closer to the door. "You don't know how to manage that place, Meg. You don't know tenant laws, repair costs, taxes, insurance zoning. You're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to make mistakes. And when you do, people will suffer." Her words were meant to frighten me. They almost did, because part of me still believed them. Part of me still saw myself as the woman who had failed at marriage, failed at saving enough, failed at becoming the kind of person Claire respected. But then I thought about Mom. I thought about the note in the safety deposit box. Being quiet is not the same as being weak. I looked at Claire and said, "Maybe I'll make mistakes, but I won't make them by deciding that vulnerable people are disposable." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Claire's face changed. The tears were gone. Her voice became calm again, almost businesslike. "I've spoken to an attorney." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About whether Mom was mentally competent when she changed her estate plans." I felt cold all over. "You're going to challenge the trust. I'm going to make sure everything was done properly. You're accusing me of manipulating Mom. I'm saying you were her caregiver. You were living here. You had influence. The cruelty of it was almost unbearable. For 6 years, I had done what Claire refused to do. I had stayed. And now she wanted to turn that devotion into evidence against me. "You know that isn't true," I whispered. Claire looked at me with sad, practiced eyes. "I know you loved her." That was all she said. Not I know you didn't manipulate her. Not I know you cared for her. Just enough warmth to disguise the knife. Then she turned and walked down the porch steps. At the bottom, she stopped. You should prepare yourself, she said without looking back. This may get ugly. She got into her car and drove away. I locked the door, slid down against it, and sat on the floor. For several minutes, I could not move. I wanted to call Walter. I wanted to tell him I was done, that I could not handle courtrooms, lawyers' accusations, more family whispers, more people looking at me like I was fragile and confused. I wanted to hand Rosewood House over and disappear. Then I saw Mom's old cardigan hanging on the hook by the stairs. Blue wool, slightly frayed at the cuffs. I thought about how she used to stand at the stove stirring soup with one hand while she read the newspaper with the other. She always looked calm, but now I knew calm was not the same thing as weak. Mom had been scared too. She had been widowed. She had bought a house alone. She had kept it alive for 30 years. She had faced Claire's pressure without giving in, and she had left me the key. Not because she thought I would never be afraid, because she trusted me to keep going anyway. The next morning, I took the flash drive to Walter's office. He had already arranged for a digital forensic technician to make a secure copy of everything on it. While we waited, he opened a folder and placed several papers in front of me. Claire's attorney contacted me late last night, he said. She's challenging the trust. She is considering it. Considering. Walter's expression was grim. She is claiming you may have exercised undue influence over your mother. The words made me sick. I looked at the papers but could not read them. Walter leaned forward. Meg, listen to me carefully. Your mother anticipated this. That is why she documented so much. That is why she made sure the trust was prepared while she was medically evaluated as competent. That is why she involved me. I looked up. She knew Claire would attack me. She feared it. And she still gave me this responsibility. Walter nodded. Yes. The technician came in a few minutes later with a small external drive. I found audio files, scanned documents, and a folder of correspondence, he said. Nothing appears altered. Walter thanked him and waited until the door closed. Then he looked at me. There is one file marked, Play only if Claire disputes Eleanor's wishes. My heart began pounding. He clicked the file. At first there was static. Then I heard Mom's voice, weak but clear, and after her came Claire's. What do you mean you won't sign it? Claire said. My hands gripped the edge of the table. Mom answered, I mean exactly that. Claire's voice sharpened. You're being irrational. No, I'm being careful. Meg cannot handle Rosewood House. A long silence followed. Then Mom said something that made tears fill my eyes. Meg has handled more than you will ever understand. Mom's voice filled Walter's office, thin with age, but steady in a way I had not heard for months before she died. Meg has handled more than you will ever understand. For a second, there was only silence on the recording. I sat frozen across from Walter, my fingers locked around the edge of the conference table. The air in the room felt too cold. The blinds were half closed, and strips of winter light cut across the polished wood. Then Claire spoke again. She lives in your house, she said. She depends on you. She lives here because I asked her to. That does not mean she is capable of running a property. You are confusing kindness with incompetence. I closed my eyes. Those were almost the exact words Mom had written in her letter. Claire let out an impatient breath. Mom, this is not about Meg's feelings. It is about reality. No, Mom said quietly. It is about money. The recording crackled. I could hear the faint rattle of dishes in the background. They must have been in Mom's kitchen. I pictured her sitting at the table, perhaps with her cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. Claire standing over her with papers in hand. Claire's voice lowered. You know Noah needs help. I know Noah is in trouble. Then help him. I already have. Not enough. Walter looked at me, but I could not look away from the small speaker on the table. Mom said I will not sell Rosewood House. The words were soft, but they were final. Claire was quiet for several seconds. Then she spoke in a voice I barely recognized. You would rather protect strangers than your own grandson. They are not strangers, Mom replied. They are people who trusted me, people who pay you almost nothing, people who needed a chance. Mom, this is ridiculous. That house is worth a fortune now. You could sell it, help Noah, and still have plenty left for yourself. I am not selling it. "You are being selfish." Mom's breath caught. Not dramatically, just enough for me to hear the hurt. Then she said, "I have spent my life giving what I could. I will not be shamed for choosing where my help goes." Claire's voice turned colder. "Fine. Then when you're gone, Meg won't even understand what she has. She will panic. She will sign whatever is put in front of her. I will handle it." The room around me disappeared. Every word I had feared was there, recorded, clear, undeniable. Walter stopped the audio. I stared at the speaker as if it might begin talking again. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. Not yet, not in front of that proof. Walter folded his hands. "There is more," he said. I looked at him. "I don't know if I can listen. You do not have to hear it all today." "Yes," I said after a moment. "I do." He pressed play again. Mom's voice came first. "You will not handle anything after I am gone." Claire made a sound of disbelief. "You think Walter is going to stop me? I think the truth will. Mom, stop being dramatic." "No, Claire, I am finally being honest." There was a long pause. Then Mom continued. "You have spent years speaking about Meg as though she is something I had to carry. But she has carried me. She has given up more than you know. She has sat with me when I was afraid. She has stayed when you were too busy, and you have no right to use her pain as proof that she is weak." I covered my mouth. The tears came anyway, quietly at first, then harder. I bent forward, pressing one hand against my forehead as my shoulders shook. For years I had wondered whether Mom secretly agreed with Claire, whether she saw me as dependent, unstable, a disappointment. Even when she told me she loved me, I had always feared there was a part of her that wished I had been more like my sister, more successful, more confident, more polished. But now I knew. Mom had seen me. She had seen everything. Walter let the recording play a few more seconds. Claire said, "You are turning Meg against me." Mom answered, "No, Claire, you did that yourself." Then the file ended. Walter reached across the table and paused the recording. Neither of us spoke for a while. Eventually I wiped my face and whispered, "She knew exactly what Claire thought of me." "Yes," Walter said gently. "And she still waited until after she died to tell me." "She hoped Claire would change," he said. "I believe she kept hoping until the end." That hurt too, because it sounded like Mom. She had always believed people could become better if they were loved enough. But there were some people who treated love like permission. My phone vibrated on the table. Claire. Again. I stared at her name until it stopped. Then another message appeared. "We need to meet. This has gone too far." I almost laughed. Gone too far, as though I had done something reckless by learning the truth. Walter noticed the message. "You do not need to respond," he said. "I know. But you should understand what comes next." He opened a legal pad and began explaining. Claire's attorney had not filed a formal lawsuit yet, but they had sent a notice questioning whether Mom had full mental capacity when the trust was updated. They also claimed that because I was living with Mom and managing much of her care, I may have pressured her without realizing it. The accusation felt carefully designed, not dramatic enough to sound cruel, just plausible enough to poison people's minds. "She was medically evaluated," I said. "Yes," Walter replied. "Your mother had a formal capacity assessment before she signed the final trust amendment. She was considered fully competent to make estate decisions. Then why can Claire challenge it? Anyone can make an accusation. The question is whether they can prove it. And can she?" Walter looked directly at me. No. The answer should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Because winning legally was not the same as surviving emotionally. Claire was my sister. She knew every weak place in me. She knew I hated conflict. She knew I second-guessed myself. She knew that the quickest way to make me feel guilty was to imply I had hurt Mom, and now she was using all of it. Walter slid another set of documents toward me. "These are your mother's medical records from the months surrounding the trust amendment. They show her physician's notes, her cognitive assessment, and the date she met with me privately." "Privately?" "Yes." She insisted no family members be present. I looked at the paperwork. A part of me felt relieved. Another part felt devastated. Mom had known she needed protection from her own daughter. "What happens if Claire files?" I asked. "We respond," Walter said. "We submit the trust, the records, the letters, George's documentation, and this recording." And Noah Walter's face tightened. There is evidence he may have participated in efforts to market the property before your mother died. That could become relevant. I thought about Noah's face in the photo outside Rosewood House. He had been standing right beside Claire. Not a child, not innocent. A grown man taking notes while his mother planned to uproot tenants. I wanted to hate him, but all I could feel was tired. Walter leaned back in his chair. "Meg, you should consider changing the locks at your mother's house." The suggestion startled me. Why? Because Claire may believe there are additional documents in the house. She may try to find something that supports her version of events. She has a key. I know. The thought of Claire walking through Mom's rooms while I slept made my skin crawl. Not because I believed she would steal jewelry or money, because she had already stolen something harder to replace. Peace. I nodded slowly. I'll call a locksmith. Good. When I left Walter's office, the afternoon sky was gray and low. Snow had started falling in small, thin flakes, barely enough to cover the sidewalks. I drove straight to a hardware store and bought a new deadbolt. The clerk asked whether I was doing the installation myself. "No," I said. "I'm learning that I don't have to." By the time I returned home, a locksmith was already on his way. While I waited, I stood in Mom's living room and looked at the framed photographs on the mantel. There was one of Claire and me as children at the county fair. I was holding cotton candy. Claire was laughing with her mouth open, missing one front tooth. For a few seconds, I could almost remember loving her without fear. I remembered how she used to pull me under the blanket during thunderstorms, how she cried when our father died and clung to Mom for weeks, how she used to tell me I was the only person who understood her. Somewhere along the way, she had become someone I did not recognize. Or maybe she had always been there, and I had simply spent years looking away. The locksmith arrived just before dark. He changed the front lock, the back lock, and the lock to Mom's basement office. When he finished, he handed me 3 new keys. I held them in my palm and thought about the old brass key in my purse. One key had opened Mom's secret. These keys were meant to protect it. My phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Noah. "Aunt Meg, please call me. I need to explain." I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. "Please, Mom is scared. She thinks you're going to ruin us." I read it twice. For years, I had been the one called a burden. Now they were trying to turn me into a threat. I did not answer. Not yet. Instead, I walked downstairs to the basement office. The new lock clicked behind me. The room smelled like dust lemon polish and old paper. Mom's desk sat in the corner beneath a small lamp. Her filing cabinets lined the wall. On the shelf above them were dozens of books, each one carefully arranged. I stood there in the quiet. Then I noticed something I had never seen before. One book on the highest shelf was turned backward. Its spine faced the wall, and tucked beneath it was a narrow strip of blue paper. The blue strip of paper was barely visible beneath the backward book. I stood on the basement office floor staring at it, as if it might disappear the moment I reached for it. The room had always felt crowded to me. Too many filing cabinets, too many old books, too many boxes Mom refused to throw away because, as she liked to say, you never know what might matter later. Now I understood. Mom had known exactly what might matter. I dragged Dad's old wooden chair across the floor and climbed onto it carefully. My knees protested, but I ignored them. The highest shelf was just above my reach. I stretched until my fingers brushed the book's cover. It was an old hardback copy of Little Women. Mom had read it to Claire and me when we were girls. She always cried at the same part, even though she pretended she had something in her eye. The book had been turned backward, its pages facing outward. I pulled it free. Something slipped from between the pages and landed on the desk, a small, leather-bound notebook. My breath caught. I climbed down and opened it. The first page was dated nearly a year before Mom died. September 14th. Claire came today, asked about Rosewood again, said Noah's situation is urgent. I offered to help with a small amount, but she became angry when I refused to discuss selling the house. I felt my throat tighten. The handwriting was Mom's. Smaller than usual, a little shaky, but unmistakable. I turned the page. September 28th. Claire brought papers for me to sign. She said they were routine estate documents. Walter reviewed them later. They would have given her authority to make decisions about Rosewood House. I told Claire I knew what she was doing. She cried, then said I was choosing Meg over her. October 6th. Meg does not know any of this. I hate keeping things from her, but she is already carrying so much. Claire thinks Meg is easy to control because she is kind. She is wrong. I had to sit down. The notebook trembled in my hands. For so many years I had believed my mother saw Claire in me the way everyone else did. Claire as the capable one, the successful one, the daughter who knew how to walk into a room and make people take her seriously, and me as the one who needed care. But Mom had seen something else. She had seen Claire's pressure. She had seen my silence. And she had understood the difference between them. I kept reading. November 18th. Claire came at night after Meg had gone to the pharmacy. She was agitated. She said Noah could lose his home. She said I was selfish for protecting tenants who were not even family. I told her family does not give us permission to hurt people. December 2nd. I moved the amended trust copy. If Claire finds it, she may destroy it. I have placed it where Meg will remember to look someday. My heart began pounding. The missing trust amendment. Walter had said there was one final document that could prove Mom had been fully competent and deliberate when she updated the trust. A document missing from his official files. I looked around the basement office, where Meg will remember to look someday. Mom had left me a clue. I glanced at the shelves, the books, the backward copy of Little Women. My hands moved faster now. I flipped through the notebook, searching for another hint. January 11th. Meg and I reread our favorite book tonight. She still laughs at the same silly parts. I pray she never forgets that the gentlest hearts can be the bravest ones. I stared at the words. Our favorite book, not Little Women. Mom and I had read dozens of books together over the years, but there was one she always called ours, The Secret Garden. When I was 9, I had been sick for weeks with pneumonia. Mom sat beside my bed every night and read it aloud. She made different voices for each character. When she reached the part about the locked garden, she would lower her voice and whisper, "Every door has a key, sweetheart." I looked toward the bookcase against the far wall. There it was, an old green copy of The Secret Garden tucked between two faded cookbooks. My hands went cold. I pulled it down. The book opened easily, almost as though Mom had expected me to find it. Inside, taped beneath the back cover, was a sealed envelope. On the front in her handwriting were the words, "For Walter." Proof that I chose freely. I pressed the envelope to my chest. For a moment, I could not breathe. I had found it. The document Claire might have been searching for. The one Mom had hidden in the story she used to read to me when I was scared. I did not open it. Walter had taught me enough in the last few days to know that some things had to be handled carefully. I took photographs of the envelope where it was, then placed it in a large zip bag from the kitchen. After that, I called Walter. He answered immediately. "Meg, I found something." There was a pause. Then his voice changed. "What did you find, Mom's notebook?" "And an envelope addressed to you. It says, 'Proof that I chose freely.'" Walter let out a long breath. "Do not open it." "I won't. Can you bring it to my office? I can be there in 30 minutes. "Meg," he said gently, "lock the office door behind you. Keep the envelope with you until you leave." The warning sent a chill down my back. "Do you think Claire has been in here?" "I don't know," he said, "but I know she has had access to the house before the locks were changed." I looked around Mom's basement office, at the desk, the cabinets, the shelves. The thought of Claire searching through these things while Mom was alive or after she died made my stomach twist. "I'll come now," I said. Walter was waiting at the front desk when I arrived. He led me straight into the conference room and shut the door. On the table, he had a document scanner, a legal pad, and a sealed evidence envelope. I placed Mom's notebook and the sealed envelope in front of him. For a long moment, he did not touch them. Then he said, "Your mother was very thorough. She was scared." "Yes," Walter replied, "but she was also brave." He opened the envelope carefully. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a formal letter from Mom's physician confirming that she had been evaluated privately and was fully capable of making independent legal and financial decisions. The second was a notarized statement from Mom herself. The third made my breath stop. It was a signed affidavit from a nurse who had been present during one of Mom's final hospital stays. Walter read silently for nearly a minute. Then he looked up. "This is exactly what we needed. What does it say?" He handed me the affidavit. The nurse described a conversation she had overheard between Mom and Claire. Claire had brought legal papers to the hospital. She had asked Mom to sign them, claiming they were routine documents for estate management. Mom refused. The nurse wrote that Mom was alert, coherent, and upset. She wrote that Claire became angry and told Mom that Meg was not competent enough to make decisions without help. The nurse also wrote something else, something that made my hands shake. Claire had tried to take the documents from Mom's bedside table after Mom refused to sign them. Mom had stopped her, and before Claire left, Mom had told the nurse, "Please make sure my daughter Meg knows I was never confused about what I wanted." I could not read the words twice. My vision blurred. Walter gave me time. Then he said, "Claire has a much weaker case now." "Weaker. Very weak," he corrected. "The records establish your mother's competence. The affidavit shows Claire's pressure. The audio supports the same pattern. George's emails show she was preparing for a sale before your mother died." "What happens now?" Walter folded the documents back into their folders. "Claire may still file, but if she does, we will be ready." The word we landed differently than I expected. For so long I had felt alone. Even when Mom was alive, I had often felt like I was carrying too much without anyone noticing. Now there was Walter, George, the tenants at Rosewood, the nurse who had written down the truth. And in a way, Mom, she was still protecting me. My phone began ringing. "Noah." I looked at the screen. Walter watched my face. "You do not have to answer," he said. I almost declined the call. Then I thought about the photo of Noah standing beside Claire at Rosewood House. I thought about Claire's tears on my porch. I thought about the words in Mom's notebook. "Family does not give us permission to hurt people," I answered. Aunt Meg Noah said quickly, "Please don't hang up. What do you want, Noah? I need to talk to you. About Rosewood House." His silence told me enough. "I didn't know how bad it was," he said. "You were there, Noah." I know I was. But Mom told me Grandma wanted to sell. She said you wouldn't understand." A bitter laugh escaped me. "She told everyone I wouldn't understand. I thought it was just business," he said. "I thought the tenants would get help moving. You didn't think because it was easier not to." He was quiet. Then his voice broke. "I'm sorry." The apology sounded real. But it did not erase the fear those tenants had lived with. It did not erase the way Mom had been pressured in her final months. "You need to tell Walter everything you know," I said. Noah inhaled sharply. "Mom will hate me. Your grandmother is gone, Noah. The people you helped frighten are still here. I can't betray my mother." I closed my eyes. "You already betrayed someone," I said softly. "Now you get to decide who you want to be next." I ended the call before he could answer. That evening I returned to Rosewood House. I did not tell Claire where I was going. I did not ask permission. George met me at the front door. He had a paint-stained jacket on and a worried look in his eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked. For the first time in a long time, I said I think it might be. I walked through the hallway and looked at the people Mom had protected. A woman knitting by the window, an older man reading the newspaper, the tenant who had squeezed my hand on my first visit. They did not know all the details yet. They did not know that Claire might soon drag our family into court, but they knew enough to be afraid. So I stood in the center of the hall, took a breath, and spoke clearly. "Rosewood House is not being sold." Every face turned toward me. "It is staying exactly where it is." The silence broke slowly. A relieved sob from somewhere near the stairs. A hand pressed over a mouth. Then applause. Not loud applause, not celebratory. Just the trembling kind that comes when frightened people realize they may be safe. As I stood there, I felt Mom's hand in mine again. Not literally, but in every person she had helped. And I knew Claire was right about one thing. This was going to get ugly. Because now she was not only trying to take a house from me, she was trying to take it from all of them. The applause at Rosewood House stayed with me all the way home. It was not loud. It was not the kind of applause people gave at weddings or graduations. It was fragile, grateful, the sound of people who had been holding their breath for weeks finally letting it out. By the time I parked in Mom's driveway, the sky had gone dark. Snow had started falling again, soft flakes drifting beneath the porch light. I sat in the car for a few minutes, staring at the old house where I had spent most of my life, trying to be useful without ever taking up too much space. For the first time, I understood how much of myself I had made small. Claire had not done that alone. She had pushed yes. She had criticized, dismissed, and embarrassed me. But I had helped by believing her. I went inside, hung up my coat, and stood in the quiet hallway. Mom's picture was still on the little table near the door. It had been taken years ago at a church picnic. She wore a straw hat, sunglasses, and one of those bright floral shirts she loved, even though Claire said they made her look too old-fashioned. Mom was laughing in the picture. I touched the frame. "I found it," I whispered. The next morning, Walter called before 9. "Claire has filed," he said. I had expected it. Still, my stomach dropped. Filed what? A petition challenging the trust and questioning Eleanor's capacity. I closed my eyes. Of course she had, even with the recording, even with the nurse's affidavit, even after I told the tenants Rosewood House would not be sold. "She's really doing this," I said. "Yes. Does she know about the evidence? She knows we have evidence. She does not know all of it." For a moment, I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the brass key beside the coffee machine. "What happens now?" "We prepare," Walter said. "There will be a preliminary hearing. Claire's attorney will try to paint you as emotionally dependent on your mother. They will argue you influenced her decisions." The old fear rose in me. Emotionally dependent. The phrase sounded clinical, almost polite, but I knew what it was supposed to mean. Burden. Weak. Not capable. I gripped the counter. "What do I need to do?" Walter paused. Then he said, "Tell the truth. The whole truth. No excuses for Claire. No minimizing what you did for your mother. And no minimizing yourself." That last part hurt the most. Because I had been minimizing myself for so long, I did not know where to begin. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. During those 14 days, life became a blur of paperwork, phone calls, meetings, and memories I did not want to revisit. Walter asked me to make a timeline of Mom's last year. Every doctor's appointment, every hospital stay, every time Claire visited, every moment Mom seemed clear, determined, or worried. At first, I thought I would not remember enough. Then I started writing, and I remembered everything. I remembered Claire arriving with a stack of papers in October, telling Mom they were just insurance forms. I remembered Mom asking me to take her to the bank after that. I remembered Mom hiding a folder in the basement office when she thought I was not looking. I remembered the night she woke me at 3 a.m. and asked Meg, "If something happens to me, will you promise not to let anyone rush you?" At the time, I thought she was worried about funeral arrangements. Now I understood. She had been trying to prepare me without frightening me. Walter also asked George Keller to organize all of the emails, estimates, photographs, and notes connected to Claire's visits to Rosewood House. George did more than that. He brought in 2 tenants who were willing to make statements. One was the older woman who had held my hand the day I first visited. Her name was Helen Price. She had lived at Rosewood House for almost 6 years after losing her home when her husband died, and medical bills swallowed her savings. The other was a younger woman named Tasha Miller, a night shift nurse who rented one of the upstairs rooms. They both described Claire's visits. They both remembered her saying changes were coming. They both remembered feeling pressured to leave. Helen's statement was short, but it broke something open inside me. She wrote Mrs. Dawson spoke to me like I was already gone. I read that sentence 3 times, like I was already gone. That was what Claire had done to Mom, too. She had started arranging the world without her in it while she was still alive. 3 days before the hearing, Noah called again. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered what I had told him. "You get to decide who you want to be next." I answered. "Aunt Meg," he said quietly. "Can we meet?" I looked around Mom's kitchen. Every part of me wanted to say no. No to more pain. No to more explanations. No to another person asking me to understand why they had hurt me. But I said 1 hour. At the diner on Jefferson. He was already waiting when I arrived. He looked worse than I expected. He had dark circles beneath his eyes and wore a wrinkled jacket that looked too thin for the cold. He stood when he saw me, then sat again quickly like he did not know what to do with his own body. "I'm sorry," he said before I even sat down. I slid into the booth across from him. "You said that already." "I know, so why am I here?" Noah looked down at his hands. "Because I need to tell you the truth. The waitress came over, but neither of us ordered food. I asked for coffee. Noah asked for water. Then he began. He told me about the debt, not just credit cards, not just failed investments. He had borrowed money from private lenders after a business venture fell apart. He thought he could recover quickly by investing in distressed properties. Instead, he lost more. Then he borrowed again. Each time he told himself the next deal would fix everything. It never did. Mom found out 6 months ago, he said. Was that when she started talking about Rosewood House? He nodded. She said Grandma had a property no one knew about. She said it could solve everything. And you believed her. I wanted to. The honesty in that answer hurt more than a lie would have. Did you know Grandma didn't want to sell? I asked. Noah swallowed. At first, no. Mom told me Grandma was considering it. She said she was confused and needed help making decisions. And later, he looked up at me. His eyes were wet. Later, I knew. The words landed heavily between us. How I asked. Grandma called me one night. She told me Mom was pressuring her. She told me Rosewood House was supposed to stay a safe place for people who needed it. I felt cold all over. She called you, yes. What did you say? Noah looked away. I said I would talk to Mom, but you didn't. No. Why? Because I was scared. That answer made me angry. Not because it was surprising, because it was familiar. So many people had been scared. Mom had been scared to confront Claire. I had been scared to stand up for myself. Noah had been scared to lose his mother's approval. And while everyone stayed afraid, Claire moved forward. She told me we'd only look at the place, Noah said. Then she said tenants could be relocated. Then she told me it would only be temporary. By the time I realized what was really happening, I was already involved. You were writing notes about zoning. I know. You were talking to a buyer. I know. He started crying then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silently with his head lowered and his hands shaking around the glass of water. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to sit on Mom's kitchen floor and build towers out of cereal boxes. Then I remembered Helen's statement. Mrs. Dawson spoke to me like I was already gone. I could feel sympathy for Noah and still hold him accountable. Those things could exist together. What do you want from me? I asked. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I want to tell Walter everything. I stared at him. Everything. Yes, even if it hurts your mother. He nodded slowly. She already hurt herself. The hearing took place on a gray Thursday morning. The courthouse smelled like old carpet paper and coffee. I wore the navy blue dress Mom had bought me for my 50th birthday. Claire had once told me it made me look too plain. That morning I wore it because Mom had loved it. Walter stood beside me as we waited outside the courtroom. You're ready, he said. I don't feel ready. You do not have to feel ready, he replied. You only have to stand there. The doors opened. Claire was already inside. She sat beside her attorney in a pale gray suit, her hair perfectly styled, her posture straight. From a distance she looked calm, but when our eyes met, I saw something different. Fear. For the first time in my life, Claire looked afraid of me. Not because I had become cruel, because I had stopped being easy to control. The judge entered. Everyone rose. And as I sat down in that courtroom surrounded by documents, witnesses, and the truth my mother had spent her final months protecting, I realized something. Claire had spent years calling me a burden, but now she was about to learn what happened when the person she underestimated finally stood up. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I had imagined something grand with dark wood walls and rows of spectators like in television dramas. Instead, it was quiet and narrow, with pale walls, old benches, and a faint hum from the fluorescent lights overhead. But the room felt enormous to me, because every person inside it seemed to hold a piece of my mother's final months. Claire sat at the other table beside her attorney, Daniel Pierce. He was younger than Walter Sharp, looking with a navy suit and a voice that sounded calm, even when it was trying to cut someone down. Noah sat behind Claire. He would not look at her. The judge, Honorable Patricia Langford, reviewed the documents in front of her for several minutes before speaking. This hearing concerns a petition challenging the Whitman family trust, she said. Mrs. Dawson alleges undue influence and questions Eleanor Whitman's mental capacity at the time certain amendments were made. Hearing Mom's name spoken in that formal voice made my chest ache. Eleanor Whitman, not Mom. Not the woman who used to leave notes in my lunchbox. Not the woman who made chicken soup when I had the flu. Not the woman who had hidden proof inside old books because she knew her daughter might someday need it. Just a name in a legal file. Claire's attorney stood first. He spoke politely, almost warmly. He explained that I had lived with Mom for years, that I was financially unstable after my divorce, that I relied on Mom for housing, that I managed her medications appointments and household decisions. Every statement was technically true. That was what made it so painful. He described my care for Mom as if it were evidence of manipulation instead of love. Then he said Ms. Whitman was in a position of significant influence over her mother during a period of declining health. I felt everyone's eyes turn toward me. My fingers tightened around my purse. Walter leaned close and whispered, "Breathe." So I did. Claire did not look at me. She stared straight ahead, her face, calm hands folded neatly in her lap. But I knew her too well. Her thumb kept rubbing against the side of her index finger. She did that whenever she was anxious. The judge asked Claire directly, "Mrs. Dawson, are you claiming your sister pressured your mother into creating this trust?" Claire stood. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "I believe my mother was vulnerable. My sister lived with her, depended on her financially, and had every reason to influence her decisions." The words seemed to echo in the room. Depended on her financially, every reason. For one terrible moment, I was back in Mom's kitchen hearing Claire tell me I had 30 days to leave. I felt the old panic crawl up my throat. Then I remembered the note Mom had written. "Being quiet is not the same as being weak." Walter stood. "Your Honor." He said the evidence will show that Eleanor Whitman made these decisions voluntarily while mentally competent and after expressing serious concerns about Mrs. Dawson's intentions regarding Rosewood House. Daniel Pierce objected. The judge allowed Walter to continue. Walter began with the medical records. He presented Mom's capacity evaluation from the doctor who saw her before the trust amendment was signed. The report stated that Mom understood her assets, recognized the people in her life, and clearly explained why she wished to establish the trust. Then Walter presented the notarized statement Mom had signed. I watched Claire's expression change as the judge read the line aloud. "My daughter Meg Whitman has never pressured me regarding my assets. My decisions are my own." Claire's mouth tightened. Next came the nurse's affidavit. Walter read the part where the nurse described Claire bringing papers to Mom's hospital room. The courtroom became so quiet, I could hear someone shifting in the gallery. The nurse had written that Claire claimed the documents were routine estate management papers. She had written that Mom refused. And she had written that Claire became angry when Mom said she wanted Walter to review everything privately. Claire shook her head. "That's not what happened," she whispered. Walter looked at her. Then he placed the audio recording into evidence. The courtroom speaker clicked softly. Mom's voice came through, weak but clear. "I will not sell Rosewood House." Claire's voice followed. "You would rather protect strangers than your own grandson." I could not look at her. I stared at the judge. The recording continued. Then came the words that made the entire room feel still. "Once you're gone, Meg won't even understand what she has. She will panic. She will sign whatever is put in front of her. I will handle it." A quiet gasp came from somewhere behind me. Claire's face went pale. Daniel Pierce stood quickly. "Your Honor, we need to question the authenticity and context of that recording." Walter had expected it. He presented the forensic verification of the files, the technician's report, the metadata, the secure copy. The recording had not been altered. Claire sat down slowly. For the first time, she looked less like my powerful younger sister, and more like someone caught in a room where every exit had disappeared. Then George Keller took the stand. He wore a dark suit that looked uncomfortable on him. His hands were rough, his posture stiff, but his voice was steady. He explained how Mom had owned Rosewood House for decades. He described the property's purpose: affordable rooms, long-term tenants, a home for people rebuilding after loss. Then Walter asked, "Did Mrs. Dawson visit Rosewood House prior to Eleanor Whitman's death?" "Yes," George said. "How many times?" "At least 3. And what did she discuss?" "Selling the property, renovating it, clearing out tenants, preparing it for market." Claire's attorney tried to make George sound unreliable. "Mr. Keller, is it possible Mrs. Dawson was merely gathering information to help her mother?" George looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "No." The word was simple, but it carried weight. "Why not?" the attorney asked. "Because Eleanor told me directly she did not want the house sold, and because Mrs. Dawson told tenants they might need to leave." Claire glanced toward Noah. He looked down at the floor. Walter introduced the emails. Claire's messages asking for estimates, her notes about increasing value, her plans to remove unnecessary tenant furnishings. The printed sheet with the words, "Vacate lower floor units first." The judge read it silently. Then she looked at Claire. "Mrs. Dawson, did you write these notes?" Claire hesitated. Her attorney leaned toward her, but Claire spoke before he could. "I was under pressure," she said. The judge's eyes narrowed. "That was not my question." Claire swallowed. "Yes." The answer changed the room. It was no longer just about assumptions, no longer just about family tension. Claire had admitted she had been planning around a house that was not hers to sell. Walter called Helen Price next. Helen walked slowly to the witness stand, holding the rail tightly. She looked tiny beneath the courtroom lights, but when she spoke, her voice was clear. "My husband died after a long illness," she said. "I lost our house because of medical bills. Mrs. Whitman gave me a room at Rosewood House when I had nowhere to go." Her eyes filled with tears. "She never made me feel ashamed. I looked down." Helen continued. "Then Mrs. Dawson came by. She told me the house would probably be sold. She said I should start thinking about where I would go." The judge asked, "How did that make you feel?" Helen looked at Claire. Then she said, "Like I was already gone." Claire flinched. "I saw it. Just a small movement. But I saw it." The final witness was Noah. When Walter called his name, Claire turned sharply toward him. "Noah," she whispered. He looked at her. For a moment I thought he might stand up and walk out. Instead, he rose slowly and took the witness stand. He looked older than he had at the diner, tired, ashamed. Walter asked him to describe his involvement. At first, Noah spoke softly. He said his debts had become overwhelming. He said Claire told him Rosewood House could solve everything. He said he believed Mom was considering a sale. Then Walter asked the question that changed everything. "When did you learn Eleanor Whitman did not want to sell Rosewood House?" Noah stared at his hands. "Before she died," he said. Claire's face changed. "Noah," she said sharply. The judge looked at her. Claire fell silent. Noah continued. "Grandma called me. She told me Mom was pressuring her. She told me Rosewood House was supposed to stay safe for people who needed it." Walter asked, "What did you do?" Noah's voice cracked. "Nothing." I closed my eyes. The shame in his voice was real, but the damage was real too. "Did you visit Rosewood House with your mother?" Walter asked. "Yes." "Did you discuss possible sales or redevelopment?" "Yes." "Did you know tenants could lose their homes?" Noah looked toward Claire, then back at Walter. "Yes." Claire began crying quietly, but this time I did not feel pulled toward her. I did not feel responsible for making her pain easier. The judge took a long moment to review the evidence. Then she spoke. "Mrs. Dawson's petition is denied." The words landed like thunder. I did not move. I could not. The judge continued. "The court finds that Eleanor Whitman acted voluntarily and with full mental capacity when establishing and amending the trust. The evidence also indicates that Mrs. Dawson made efforts to gain control over Rosewood House against her mother's stated wishes." Claire covered her face. Walter placed one hand gently on my shoulder. The judge looked directly at me. "Ms. Whitman, you are confirmed as the sole beneficiary and trustee of Rosewood House under the terms of the trust." My breath shook. Confirmed. Sole beneficiary. Trustee. Words I had never imagined belonged to me. Then the judge added, "The court also notes that there may be grounds for additional civil action regarding attempted interference with the trust and tenant intimidation. That decision rests with the trustee." Everyone looked at me. Claire looked at me too. Her eyes were red. For the first time in my life, she did not look powerful. She looked afraid. And I realized I had a choice. I could try to destroy her. I could push until every mistake she had made cost her everything. Or I could protect what mattered most. Rosewood House, the tenants, myself. I stood slowly. My knees shook, but my voice did not. Your Honor, I said I do not want revenge. Claire's eyes widened. But I do want boundaries. I want Rosewood House protected. I want the tenants protected. And I want it made clear that no one gets to use family as an excuse to take what does not belong to them. The judge nodded, and as the hearing ended, I looked at Claire one last time. She had called me a burden, but I was the one standing. The courthouse hallway felt strangely quiet after the judge denied Claire's petition. People passed around us in low voices. Court clerks carried folders. Someone laughed near the vending machines at the end of the hall. A man in a gray suit argued into his phone about a parking ticket. Ordinary life kept moving, but mine had split cleanly into before and after. Before I had been Meg Whitman, the older sister Claire could talk over, correct, embarrass, and quietly define. After I was the woman my mother had trusted with Rosewood House. Walter stood beside me as the courtroom doors closed behind us. You handled yourself beautifully, he said. I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking. I thought I would feel relieved. You may, he said. Just not all at once. Claire emerged a few minutes later with Daniel Pierce at her side. Her face was pale, and her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes. Noah followed behind them carrying her coat. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Claire looked directly at me. Meg. Her voice was softer than I had ever heard it. Walter shifted slightly beside me, but I lifted a hand to let him know I was all right. Claire took a step closer. I didn't know it would go this far. I stared at her. You filed a court case against me. I know. You accused me of manipulating Mom. I know. You tried to sell a house Mom built to protect people. She swallowed. I was desperate. No, I said quietly. You were willing. Her eyes filled with tears. I did not feel satisfaction when I saw them. I only felt tired. Claire looked toward Noah, then back at me. I was trying to save my son, and Mom was trying to save people too. I understand that now. You understood it before I said. You just thought Noah mattered more. Her face crumpled at that. Noah stepped forward, his shoulders hunched. Aunt Meg, he said, I'm sorry. I looked at him for a long moment. You should be. He nodded, eyes lowered. I'm going to talk to the lenders, he said. I'm selling my truck. I'm going to take a second job if I have to. That is your responsibility, I replied. I know. For once, no one asked me to fix anything. No one told me to make the situation easier. No one expected me to absorb the consequences of their choices. That was new. Claire reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just enough. Her hand fell to her side. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You don't fix it today. Her eyes lifted to mine. You start by leaving Rosewood House alone. You stop telling people I am weak. You stop using Mom's love for me as proof that I owed you something. Claire nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I will. I wanted to believe her. A small part of me still did. But trust was not built by tears in a courthouse hallway. It was built by changed behavior over time. And I had learned that words meant very little when they were not followed by action. Walter cleared his throat gently. Meg, we should discuss the next legal steps. Claire looked frightened again. Next steps, she asked. Walter answered evenly. The judge noted possible civil liability related to attempted interference with the trust and tenant intimidation. Noah went still. Claire closed her eyes. I could see the panic rising in her. The same panic she must have felt when she realized the evidence against her was real. The same panic she had tried to hand to me at the funeral in Mom's kitchen on my porch and through legal papers. For 1 second, I imagined what it would feel like to make her pay for all of it. Every insult, every lie, every time she made me feel like I had to apologize for existing. But then I thought of Mom's final letter. Do not hate your sister so deeply that you become like her. I took a slow breath. Walter, I said I don't want to pursue damages right now. Claire looked up sharply. No, she whispered. No. Walter studied me. Are you sure? Yes, but I want written protections. His expression changed slightly. What kind? I want Claire and Noah barred from making decisions for Rosewood House. I want them prohibited from contacting tenants, contractors, or prospective buyers on behalf of the property. I want all records preserved, and I want a formal notice sent to anyone Claire contacted about a possible sale, making it clear the property is not for sale. Walter nodded. That can be done. Claire's mouth trembled. You're not going to sue me? I'm not going to destroy you, I said. But I am not going to protect you from the consequences of what you did either. For the first time, she looked at me without anger, only shame. That afternoon, Walter and I returned to his office to begin the paperwork. The more we reviewed the trust, the more I realized how carefully Mom had planned everything. Rosewood House was not simply left to me as a piece of property. It had a purpose written into the trust. Affordable long-term housing. Priority for older women, widows, caregivers, and people recovering from financial hardship. No sale without extraordinary circumstances and court approval. No tenant could be removed just to increase profits. Mom had thought of everything. She built this like a shield, I said. Walter smiled faintly. That sounds like Eleanor. I ran my fingers over the trust documents. All my life I had thought Mom was gentle. Now I understood she had been strategic too. Gentle did not mean defenseless. Kind did not mean easy to control. By the time I left Walter's office, the sun was beginning to set. I drove directly to Rosewood House. I did not call ahead. I wanted to see it as it was when no one was expecting me. The porch lights were on. Through the windows, I saw the warm yellow glow of lamps and the silhouettes of people moving around inside. George opened the door before I could knock. Well, he asked. I looked at him. The trust is mine. His face broke into a smile. I knew it would be. The judge denied Claire's petition. George stepped forward and hugged me. It was awkward at first. George was not a man who seemed naturally comfortable with hugs, but after a moment I hugged him back. Then he leaned away and looked at me carefully. You all right? I thought about it. No, I said honestly, but I think I'm becoming all right. He nodded as though he understood exactly what I meant. Inside, the tenants had gathered in the dining room for their weekly shared supper. There was a pot of chili on the stove, cornbread on the table, and too many mismatched chairs pulled close together. Helen was there, Tasha too. The older man who read the newspaper in the hallway waved at me from the end of the table. George tapped a spoon against his glass. Meg has something to tell you, he announced. Every face turned toward me. I felt my nerves rise. Public speaking had never been my strength. Even at library staff meetings, I used to rehearse simple announcements in my head. But this was different. I was not trying to impress anyone. I was trying to tell the truth. The court ruled today, I said. Rosewood House will remain in the trust my mother created. The room went quiet. No one is being forced out, I continued. No one is losing their home because someone decides the property is worth more than the people living in it. Helen covered her mouth. Tasha began crying. The older man at the end of the table lowered his newspaper and whispered, "Thank God." I looked around the room. I don't know everything about managing a house like this, I admitted. I don't know all the repairs, the regulations, the taxes, or the paperwork yet. But I will learn, and I will ask for help when I need it. George smiled. And I will help, he said. Several tenants nodded. One woman raised her hand as though she were in school. My daughter works in property management, she said. She might be able to help you understand leases and maintenance schedules. Another person offered to help organize records. Someone else mentioned a church group that helped with home repairs. And suddenly, Rosewood House did not feel like a burden placed on my shoulders. It felt like a community, like something Mom had built so that no one person had to stand alone. Later that evening after dinner, plates were washed and people returned to their rooms. I stood alone on the front porch. The air was cold enough to sting my cheeks. George came outside with 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to me. "You did good today," he said. I was terrified. Most brave people are. I looked across the street at the dark houses and bare winter trees. I spent so many years thinking I wasn't capable. George leaned against the porch railing. "Your mother didn't." "No," I said. "She didn't." I took a sip of tea. Then I looked at the house behind me, its wide porch, its glowing windows, its old floors and stubborn pipes, and ordinary people trying to survive. For the first time since Mom's funeral, I felt something that was not sorrow or anger. I felt responsibility, not the kind that crushed you, the kind that gave your life meaning. And as I stood there, I understood the choice I had made. I had not spared Claire because she deserved it. I had spared myself from becoming consumed by revenge. Rosewood House needed my energy more than Claire needed my punishment. The next morning, Walter called with one final detail. "Meg, he said there is an investor Claire contacted about the property. He wants a meeting." My stomach tightened. "Why, he claims he has a preliminary agreement with Claire." I looked toward Rosewood House's front lawn. The house was safe, for now. But apparently Claire's plan had reached farther than I realized, and someone still believed they had a right to take what my mother had protected. The investor's name was Martin Hale. Walter told me he owned a regional development company that specialized in buying older properties, renovating them quickly, and converting them into high-rent apartment units. The kind of company Claire would have admired. The kind of company Mom would have avoided. "He says he has a preliminary agreement with Claire," Walter explained over the phone. "Not a signed contract for sale, but enough communication that he believes she was acting with authority." What kind of communication? Emails? A draft letter of intent? Possibly verbal discussions? I felt my chest tighten. So he thinks he can still buy Rosewood House. He may believe he has grounds to pressure the trust, Walter said. He does not. But we should deal with this carefully and quickly. The meeting was set for the following afternoon at Walter's office. I barely slept the night before. Not because I thought Martin Hale could take Rosewood House from me. The judge had ruled. The trust was protected. Walter had made that clear. But something about the meeting unsettled me. It was one thing to face Claire in a courtroom. It was another thing to sit across from a stranger who saw my mother's life's work as a number on a spreadsheet. The next day, I arrived early. Walter's assistant brought me coffee, but I barely touched it. I sat in the conference room with a stack of documents in front of me, the trust, the court ruling, the notices Walter had prepared, and a folder containing letters from several Rosewood House tenants. I had asked them to write about what the house meant to them, not for the court, for me. Helen had written that Rosewood House gave her a place to grieve without being homeless. Tasha wrote that living there had allowed her to work nights without fear of losing her home after her divorce. Another tenant, a man named Raymond, wrote only one sentence. "This house gave me a reason not to give up." I kept that sentence on top of the folder. At exactly 2:00, Martin Hale walked in. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, sharply dressed with a smooth, confident face. He wore a navy suit, a silver watch, and the kind of expression that suggested he was used to people agreeing with him. Claire came in behind him. My breath caught. She was not supposed to be there. Walter saw my reaction and stood. "Mrs. Dawson is here because she is connected to the communications Mr. Hale received," he said carefully. Claire avoided my eyes. Martin shook Walter's hand, then turned to me. "Ms. Whitman," he said, "I'm sorry for your loss." His voice was polite, professional, empty. "Thank you," I replied. He sat down across from me. Claire took the chair beside him but kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. Walter began by stating the legal facts. Rosewood House was owned by the Whitman Family Trust. I was the sole trustee and beneficiary. The court had denied Claire's challenge. No sale could occur without my consent and court approval. Martin Hale listened without interrupting. Then he leaned back in his chair. "I understand the ruling," he said, "but I was led to believe there was interest in selling." Walter nodded. "You were misled." Martin glanced at Claire. Her face flushed. "I didn't mislead anyone," she said quickly. "I was exploring options." "You told tenants they may need to leave," I said. Claire looked at me. "I was under pressure." "You keep saying that like pressure made the decisions for you." Martin shifted in his seat. "This doesn't need to become personal," he said. I turned to him. "It became personal when my sister tried to sell homes out from under people who trusted my mother." For the first time, his confident smile faded. Walter opened a folder and slid several documents toward him. "These are notices formally withdrawing any implied authority Mrs. Dawson may have claimed," Walter said. "And these are copies of the court ruling." Martin scanned them. Then he looked at me again. "Ms. Whitman, if I may be candid, Rosewood House is underperforming. The property needs major updates. The land value alone is substantial. You could create a large endowment and still help people in other ways." His words were reasonable. That was what made them dangerous. He was offering an easier version of Mom's dream. Sell the difficult house, take the money, write checks, move on. For a moment I almost understood why Claire had been tempted. Rosewood House had old pipes, uneven floors, expensive repairs, and a roof that probably needed work soon. It was complicated. It demanded time. A check would be simpler. But Mom had not chosen simple. She had chosen people. I placed Raymond's letter on the table. "This house is not underperforming," I said. Martin looked at the paper. "It may not be generating the return you expect," I continued, "but it is doing exactly what my mother intended. It gives people time. It gives them a safe place to recover. It gives them a chance to stay standing when everything else has fallen apart." Claire looked down. Martin's expression shifted. Not guilt, exactly, more like calculation. "I respect that," he said, "but there are risks. You could find yourself overwhelmed." There it was again. The same word Claire had used, overwhelmed, as if being frightened was proof I should surrender. I looked at him steadily. "Maybe I will be overwhelmed sometimes," I said, "but that does not mean I'm incapable." Walter's eyes softened beside me. Martin was quiet for a moment. Then he closed the folder. "All right," he said. "I will withdraw any interest in purchasing the property." Claire looked up sharply. "Martin!" He raised one hand. "No, Claire. There is no legal path here, and I do not do business where ownership is disputed this clearly." She stared at him. For a second I saw the panic return to her face, not because Rosewood House was being taken from her, because the final illusion of control was gone. Martin stood. "I wish you luck, Miss Whitman," he said. "Thank you," I replied. He paused at the door. Then he added, "For what it's worth, your mother built something unusual." After he left the room, became silent. Claire was still seated across from me. Her shoulders had collapsed inward. For the first time, she did not look like my younger sister, who always had a plan. She looked like someone who had reached the end of hers. Walter gathered the documents slowly. "I'll give you two a few minutes," he said. Then he left the room. Claire and I sat there alone. I did not know what to say. I had imagined this moment before. I imagined Claire apologizing perfectly. I imagined myself finally saying every cruel thing I had swallowed for years. But real pain was not that neat. Claire stared at the table. "I didn't want it to get this bad," she whispered. "You kept making choices that made it worse." "I know. You could have told me about Noah. I was ashamed. You could have asked Mom for help honestly." "I did." "No," I said. "You asked her to sacrifice everyone else." Claire flinched. "I thought I was protecting my son. You were protecting him from consequences." Her eyes filled. "I don't know how to be a mother who watches her child suffer." The sentence came out broken. For the first time I heard something real in her voice. Not an excuse, not a strategy, just fear. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said I understand that fear. But Mom was also a mother. She loved you. She loved Noah. And she still knew there were lines she could not cross. Claire began crying quietly. "I failed her," she said. "Yes," I said. She looked up hurt. But I did not take it back, because the truth was not cruelty. The truth was the first honest thing we had shared in years. "I failed her," she repeated. "Yes," I said again, softer this time. "But you are still alive. You can decide what you do next." Claire wiped her face. "You think I can fix this?" "No," I said. "Not quickly. Maybe not completely." Her shoulders sagged. "But you can stop making it worse." That was all I could offer her. Not forgiveness on demand, not a clean slate, just the possibility of choosing differently. A week later, Rosewood House held its reopening gathering. It was not a grand event. We did not have a ribbon cutting or a band. We had folding chairs, coffee and paper cups, homemade cookies, and a small sign near the front porch that said only "Welcome Home." I had insisted on no speech, but George ignored me. He tapped a spoon against a mug and motioned for everyone to quiet down. "Meg," he said, "say something." I stood reluctantly. In front of me were tenants, neighbors, members of the local church, 2 women from a housing nonprofit, and Walter. At the back of the crowd stood Claire. She had come alone. No perfect makeup, no polished outfit, just a dark coat and tired eyes. For a moment, I did not know whether she had come to ask for something. Then I realized she had come simply to watch. So I spoke. My mother believed that people deserve dignity, especially when life had made them feel small, I said. She believed a home should be more than walls and rent. It should be a place where you can breathe long enough to rebuild. My voice shook, but I continued. Rosewood House is staying open. We will repair what needs repairing. We will learn as we go. And we will keep the promise my mother made. Helen reached for my hand. Someone began clapping. Then everyone did. This time the applause was louder. Not because the danger was over forever, but because hope had returned. Afterward, Claire approached me near the porch steps. She stopped a few feet away. I'm not here to interfere, she said. I know. I just wanted to see it. I looked behind me at the house, at the people Mom had protected, at the life I was beginning to build. Then I looked back at Claire. You can see it, I said, but you don't get to control it. She nodded. I understand. For once, I believed she might. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to take the first step. As she turned to leave, I thought about the day of Mom's funeral. The way Claire had called me a burden. The way I had stood there silent and humiliated. If she saw me now, I wondered whether she understood what Mom had known all along. I was never weak. I was simply waiting to believe in myself. 6 months after the courthouse hearing, I stopped waking up every morning, expecting something terrible to happen. For a long time I had slept lightly. Every phone call made my heart race. Every envelope in the mailbox felt like another legal notice. Every unfamiliar car slowing near Rosewood House made me wonder whether Claire had found another way to interfere. But little by little life became quieter. Not perfect. Quiet. Rosewood House had its share of problems. The upstairs bathroom leaked one February morning and sent water dripping through the dining room ceiling. The old boiler made a sound like a train every time the temperature dropped below freezing. One tenant's cat had kittens behind the laundry machines, and George spent an entire afternoon pretending he was annoyed while secretly carrying them upstairs in a cardboard box. There were bills, repairs, insurance forms, tenant meetings, more paperwork than I ever imagined. But I learned. George taught me how to read contractor estimates without letting anyone rush me. Tasha helped me understand lease renewals and maintenance schedules. Helen organized a small welcome basket for every new resident who moved in, and I stopped apologizing every time I asked a question. That was one of the biggest changes in me. I used to think needing help meant I was incapable. Now I understood that asking for help was part of being responsible. The house began filling with life again. A woman named Denise moved in after leaving a marriage that had drained every dollar she had saved. She arrived with 2 suitcases, a frightened little dog, and an apology for everything. I'm sorry I don't have more, she told me at the front door. I looked at her and thought of myself after my divorce. Then I said, You have enough to begin. She cried. I cried too. Another resident was a retired school cafeteria worker named Marlene. Her apartment building had been sold, and the new owners raised the rent beyond what she could afford. She had nowhere to go when a church volunteer told her about Rosewood House. The day she moved in, she stood on the porch and looked up at the windows. I thought people my age were supposed to have it all figured out, she said. I smiled sadly. None of us do. That became the truth Rosewood House was built around. No one had to have everything figured out to deserve a safe place. Claire did not disappear from my life. At first, she kept her distance. She sent one short message after the hearing. I am starting counseling. I know that does not change anything. I just wanted you to know. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I hope you keep going. That was all. I did not tell her I forgave her. I was not ready. I did not say I wanted things to go back to normal. I did not. Because normal had been built on silence fear, and me accepting whatever scraps of kindness she decided to give me. I wanted something different. Months passed before I saw her in person again. It was early spring. The dogwoods around Rosewood House had begun to bloom, and George was complaining about the cost of repainting the porch railing. I was carrying a box of donated towels through the front hall when I heard someone say my name, Meg. I turned. Claire stood just inside the open doorway. She looked different, not dramatically. She still dressed neatly. Her hair was still styled. Her posture was still careful. But there was something softer around her eyes now, something tired and honest. Noah stood beside her. He looked thinner than before, less polished, more like a man who had finally stopped pretending everything was fine. Neither of them stepped farther inside. "We don't want to disturb you," Claire said. "You're not disturbing me," I replied. Noah held a small cardboard box. "We brought some things," he said. "Blankets, towels, cleaning supplies. My work donated them." I looked at the box. It was not enough to erase what they had done, but it was something. Claire noticed my hesitation. "You don't have to take them," she said quickly. "We just wanted to contribute, without expecting anything back." The word surprised me, without expecting anything back. That was a sentence Claire had never understood before. I set my own box down. "Thank you," I said. Noah's shoulders loosened slightly. Claire looked around the hallway. Her eyes paused on the framed photos Mom had kept at Rosewood House. One showed Eleanor standing beside a group of tenants at a summer picnic. Claire stared at it for a long time. "She really loved this place," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "She loved helping people." "Yes." Claire nodded slowly. Then she looked at me. "I used to think she was choosing strangers over us." I said nothing. "I see now that she was trying to teach us something," Claire continued. "She was trying to show us that love is not ownership." The hallway became quiet. Noah looked down. Claire's voice cracked slightly. "I thought being her daughter meant I deserved access to everything she had, her money, her property, her decisions. I thought I could take control because I was scared." I looked at her. "And now I know being scared does not give me permission to hurt other people." It was the closest thing to a true apology she had ever given me. Not because she cried, not because she said she had been desperate, but because she finally named what she had done. I nodded once. "That matters." Claire's eyes filled. "Is there any chance you could forgive me someday?" I looked through the front window at the garden my mother had planted years ago. New green leaves were pushing through the soil. Forgiveness was not a door you unlocked with one key. It was not something you owed because someone finally felt sorry. But I no longer wanted to carry hatred like it was proof that I had been hurt. "I don't know," I told her honestly, "but I'm willing to see what you do next." Claire nodded. "I understand." And for once, she did not ask for more. A few weeks later, I found something inside the old brass key. It happened by accident. George had taken the key to a locksmith because the small ring at the top had cracked. When he returned it, he handed it to me with a puzzled look. "You know this thing is hollow?" he asked. "No." There was something stuck inside. He placed a tiny, rolled piece of paper in my palm. My heart stopped. The paper was yellowed and delicate. I unrolled it slowly. The handwriting was Mom's. Just one sentence. "A burden is only a name given by someone who cannot see your worth." I sat down on the porch steps because my knees suddenly felt weak. For years, Claire's voice had lived inside me. "You're dependent. You're emotional. You can't handle things. You need someone to take care of you." I had carried those words like they were facts. But Mom had left me something stronger. Not money, not property, not legal protection. A truth. I had never been a burden. I had been a daughter trying to survive a broken marriage, a caregiver trying to keep her mother safe, a woman who had spent too long confusing gentleness with weakness. Rosewood House taught me something my mother had known all along. People who need help are not burdens. People who make mistakes are not burdens. People who are grieving, starting over, aging, healing, or scared are not burdens. Sometimes they are simply people standing at the edge of a hard season, needing someone to remind them they still matter. That summer, we held a small garden lunch at Rosewood House. The tenants set up folding tables under the trees. George grilled hamburgers badly and insisted they were charcoal-flavored. Helen brought potato salad. Tasha brought her daughter, who ran through the yard chasing bubbles. I stood near the porch with the brass key in my hand. The same key Walter had placed in my palm at Mom's funeral. The key Claire had looked at with fear. The key that had led me to Rosewood House, to Mom's letters, to the truth about my sister, and finally to myself. Walter came up beside me. "You look happy," he said. "I think I am." He smiled. "Your mother would be proud." I looked at the house, at the tenants laughing in the yard, at the women who had arrived with nothing but fear and were beginning again. At the garden, blooming where Mom's quiet love had taken root. She already knew, I said, and this time I believed it. Sometimes the people who call you a burden are not describing who you are. They are revealing what they are unwilling to understand. A person may call you weak because your kindness makes them uncomfortable. They may call you dependent because they cannot imagine love without control. They may make you feel small because your silence allows them to feel bigger. But your worth is not decided by the loudest person in the room. Meg spent years believing that caring for her mother made her less independent. She thought needing support after a divorce made her a failure. She thought being gentle meant she could not lead. But in the end, her kindness became the very reason she was trusted with something meaningful. Rosewood House did not need someone cold enough to turn people into numbers. It needed someone who could see the human stories behind every door. That is the lesson: you can be soft-hearted and strong. You can forgive without surrendering your boundaries. You can love your family without allowing them to destroy your peace. And sometimes the greatest inheritance is not money or property. Sometimes it is finally seeing yourself through the eyes of someone who knew your heart. If this story moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been called a burden by someone who did not understand your sacrifices? And what would you have done if you were Meg? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. Your story may be the encouragement someone else needs today.